Hello everyone, if you're new to my channel, consider liking and subscribing. It will make me feel wonderful if you do that. Thanks. By the way, I also have another Naruto and Luffy fanfiction channel. If you are interested, link is in the description.
One Piece Talent Copy System by dragonnx. In the vast and perilous world of One Piece, with a seas teeming with pirates, marines, and untold mysteries, a young man is given a second chance at life. Reincarnated into this fantastical universe, he discovers he possesses a unique and powerful copy talent system, an ability that allows him to copy the talents and skills of others, including Devil Fruits. Member list: Taz Peterson, Yanko, Leilani Morris, Warlord, Garrick Russell, Warlord, Black Money Young Lion, Warlord, KSG PL 4YZ, Warlord, Adio.
The atmosphere on the coast was strangely tense. Noir, like he was practicing some bizarre martial art, had been holding two swords aloft for almost an entire day. His arms were aching, but the Marines hadn't made a single move. After surrounding him and informing Sengoku, the Marine Guard hadn't relaxed. In fact, they'd tightened their perimeter. Even that old fox, Kizaru, was constantly watching him, keeping one eye open even while supposedly napping. Noir was so frustrated he wanted to scream. He was almost tempted to transform into light and bolt. The Devil Fruits copied by his talent system replicated the user's proficiency level as well. So, aside from practical experience, Noir's Pika Pika no Mi abilities were on par with Kizaru's. The difference was that while Kizaru had pushed his powers to the absolute limit, leaving a sliver of room for improvement, Noir had no room to grow at all. In short, if he could shake off Kizaru, no one in the Marines could stop him. So, Noir wasn't worried about Kizaru calling for reinforcements. In his nearly a year at sea, he hadn't mastered many skills, but escaping? He was a pro. Noir summoned his crew from the underworld. Lucci, seeing Noir's stiff posture, couldn't help but chuckle. "Captain, what are you doing?" Noir's lips twitched. "Less talk, more action. Cover for me, don't give Kizaru an opening." Lucci shrugged and tightened his grip on the celestial dragon he was holding hostage. Wiper held his sword against Z's throat. Noir, finally able to lower his arms, gratefully accepted a code from Robin. "What's the situation?" Robin knew what Noir was thinking. He had plenty of ways to escape, but he was clearly waiting for an opportunity to gain something. As expected, Noir crouched on the deck, looking at the Marines stationed on the shore with a mischievous glint in his eyes. "I'm thinking of using Z to get something out of the Marines." Robin looked at him, unimpressed. "What do you want? We're not exactly short on money." After the Heavenly Tribute heist, the underworld pirates had amassed a considerable fortune, more than enough for each member's leisure and, most importantly, their training. Noir nodded, a thoughtful expression on his face. "There's something the Marines have that I've got my eye on." Robin raised an eyebrow. "What could the Marines have that would interest you?" "A humanoid weapon of war. They're called pacifistas. Have you heard of them?" Noir looked at Robin, who shook her head. "No, never heard of them." Lucci shook his head as well. "I haven't heard of them either. Even in CP9, that kind of information wouldn't reach my level." Noir scratched his head. "What's going on? Has Bartholomew Kuma not been modified by Vegapunk yet? Even if not, it should be about time. The pacifistas should be making their appearance soon." Technological advancement in the One Piece world was incredibly polarized. The average Marine used flintlock pistols that could only fire a few shots, warships were equipped with standard cannons, and the general population lived with relatively basic technology. Yet, there was this one guy, Vegapunk, 500 years ahead of everyone else, churning out all sorts of crazy inventions. Pacifistas were one thing. Frankie's self-modifications, the Germa 66 raid suits, all examples of cutting-edge technology. The blueprints for the Iron Man suit that Noir had acquired would also be a good way to mass-produce combat power if he could get them manufactured. But if the pacifistas didn't exist yet, Noir had no examples or experience to draw upon. A mischievous idea began to form in Noir's mind. Instead of stealing a pacifista, it might be more practical to kidnap a highly intelligent scientist. Vegapunk was too heavily guarded by the government. Even with Z as a bargaining chip, it was unlikely they would hand him over. As for other scientists besides Vegapunk, there were two other potential candidates, Vinsmoke Judge and Caesar Clown. Both were brilliant minds, worth considering. But in that case, what exactly should he demand from the Marines? As Noir pondered his options, the representatives from Marine headquarters finally arrived. Several tall, mysterious figures in white suits and masks appeared at the Marine barricade, their gazes fixed on Noir. Kizaru raised an eyebrow at the newcomers. It wasn't Marines sent by the fleet admiral, but CP0, dispatched directly by the government. Had Sengoku yielded to the government, Kizaru launched a small boat, carrying the masked CP0 agent in the lead, towards Noir's ship. Noir watched as Kizaru and the masked figure approached. He walked to the front of the ship, where Lucci and Wiper stood guard, his hands in his pockets, his gaze cold and unwavering. Robin stood beside him, like a glamorous secretary. The masked CP0 agent, observing Noir's fearless demeanor, felt a sense of unease. CP0 hated dealing with people who disregarded the authority of the world government. Noir, looking at the agent, smiled. "It seems you've made your decision. Is it one life or negotiation?" The masked agent inwardly sighed in relief. At least Devil Noir wasn't a hothead intent on killing someone. As long as he wanted something in return, there was room for discussion. Maintaining a composed demeanor, the agent replied, "The latter, Mr. Devil Noir." Noir chuckled and flicked his wrist, sending out ice particles that formed 2 rows of chairs on the sea's surface. Both sides sat facing each other, the scene resembling a high-stakes negotiation after a world war. Noir rested his chin on his hand and spoke first. "The Marines have been relentlessly hunting me for ages. Can't we just call a truce?" Beneath the CP0 mask, the agent's lips twitched. "You've kidnapped celestial dragons and caused widespread chaos. Do you really not know why the government is after you?" Noir had taken celestial dragons hostage as a shield, repeatedly thwarting the government's attempts at retaliation, leaving them frustrated and bewildered. Faced with an elusive and ruthless opponent who disregarded their threats, the government had little choice but to negotiate. Composing himself, the agent said in a serious tone, "Mr. Devil Noir, we request the release of all the celestial dragons, as well as the Marines, including Z. In return, we are prepared to offer you satisfactory compensation." They've already come up with terms. What could they possibly offer to ransom Z and the others? Noir, intrigued, leaned forward. "Tell me, I might just be satisfied." The agent produced a dark, gold-embossed invitation and presented it to Noir. "The government invites you, Mr. Devil Noir, to join the 7 warlords of the sea, taking the position left vacant by Gecko Moria." Noir stared at the invitation, dumbfounded. He burned down Mary Joieuse, killed several celestial dragons, and antagonized the Marines for months, and now they were inviting him to become a warlord. The thought was absurd. Can they really tolerate all of that? Are they insane? Kizaru had reported to Sengoku, but it was CP0 handling the negotiation. Had Sengoku backed down? That seemed unlikely. Noir studied the masked agent, a nagging suspicion growing in his mind. This feels like a trap set by Sengoku. Noir considered the offer. Becoming a warlord of the sea had definite advantages. The warlords were, in essence, a temporary group created to maintain a balance of power. Their eventual disbandment was inevitable. As seen in the original storyline, after the Summit War of Marineford, piracy escalated, yet the Marines emerged victorious, their reputation soaring. This made the warlords' position increasingly precarious, leading to their eventual dismissal, proposed by Fujitora and readily approved. While the warlords still held their precarious position, Noir was keen to exploit their privileges for some legitimate activities. As a warlord, he would gain the legal right to plunder. The constant pursuit by the Marines would cease, and he could even enlist their help for certain tasks. The price for this freedom was his reputation and influence, which the government desperately needed. He would also be obligated to assist the Marines in major incidents. Of course, the extent of his cooperation would be up to him, much like a certain swordsman with a penchant for napping in boats. The warlord title would simplify his search for Noidum Kingdom and provide legal grounds for rebuilding his kingdom, much like Doflamingo had done with Dressrosa. Though he liked the offer, Noir kept his expression neutral. He addressed the masked agent. "You think this one perk is enough to ransom Z, the others, and the celestial dragons?" The masked agent, recognizing Noir's shrewdness, quickly added, "Of course not. The warlord invitation is simply one component. We are prepared to offer a belly ransom for the hostages in your possession." Belly, Noir's interest waned. The agent continued, "However, 10 billion belly per celestial dragon is excessive. The government wishes to propose a more reasonable amount." Noir's eyes narrowed. "And what amount would that be? And how do you intend to value the Marines?" The masked agent paused, then stated, "Including the Marines, we propose 1 billion belly per hostage, excluding rankless Marine soldiers." Noir nearly exploded. 10 billion down to 1 billion? That was a blatant lowball offer? Had the world government sent this clown to mock him? The masked agent was sweating. There was no way around it. Noir, the kidnapping fiend, had taken far too many hostages. He hurried to calm Noir, his voice tinged with desperation. "Please, remain calm. You're holding a significant number of individuals. 10 billion belly per person is a sum we cannot readily produce." Noir's face remained dark. No money? While he hadn't expected 10 billion per person, considering the celestial dragon's extravagant spending habits, 1 billion was an insult. He could earn that much selling a few devil fruits on the black market. "I'm willing to waive the ransom for the rankless Marines," Noir said coldly, "but you'd better reconsider your offer for the others. Otherwise, I won't guarantee their survival." The masked CP0 agent felt a bead of sweat trickle down his forehead. He mentally reviewed the list Sengoku had provided, along with the remaining 34 celestial dragons. Noir had captured 9 officers of captain rank or higher, along with the former admiral instructor, Z, making a total of 10 high-value marines. That, combined with the celestial dragons, meant 44 hostages, if the ransom was 10 billion per person. The agent couldn't bear to calculate the total. He gritted his teeth, cold sweat dripping down his back. 5 billion belly per hostage. We cannot offer more. Although he held the advantage, Noir knew he couldn't push too far. If he cornered the 5 elders, they might be desperate enough to disregard the safety of the hostages and escalate the conflict. Holding up his right hand, he signaled with 9 fingers, 9 billion. Lucci sighed internally. He knew Noir was providing an out for the government, but this out was a rather steep cliff. The agent's face, though unseen, flushed crimson. His mission was to persuade Noir to join the warlords and then negotiate a ransom. The first part seemed to be progressing smoothly, but the ransom was proving problematic. The government's budget was tight. If he overspent, the 5 elders might unleash Sengoku, who was practically foaming at the mouth for revenge. The CP0 agent's jaw clenched so tightly he thought his teeth might shatter. His voice trembled slightly. 7 billion, we absolutely cannot go higher. Noir was surprised. Could the government be this strapped for cash? While the world government maintained the Marines across the 4 Blues, the Cipher Pole agencies, and the Celestial Dragons and Mary Joies, all considerable expenses, they also received the heavenly tribute from every nation under their control. Surely, that must amount to a significant sum? Then Noir remembered. This year's heavenly tribute had never reached the government's coffers. He had intercepted it. Well, that certainly explained their sudden lack of liquidity. Fighting back a grin, Noir feigned further hesitation, driving the masked agent to the brink of a conqueror's hockey eruption, before finally relenting. Seeing as the world government is so eager to cooperate, he conceded, 7 billion is acceptable. Despite securing the agreement, the agent felt a wave of dizziness, a trickle of blood escaping the corner of his mouth. 7 billion belly. That was more than the bounty on a Yonko. If not for his last vestiges of professionalism, he would have lunged at Noir, regardless of the inevitable beating he would receive. Given the choice between ransoming celestial dragons and putting a bounty on a Yonko, he'd choose the latter every time. Noir, on the other hand, felt a surge of satisfaction. He'd practiced negotiations with Nami countless times, but this was his first major business deal, and it was exhilarating. The masked agent composed himself, though his normally ramrod straight posture was now slightly stooped, and his voice was weary. Mr. Devil Noir, he asked, when shall we proceed with the exchange? Noir waved his hand dismissively. No rush. Let's wait until I've reached a secure location. Suspicion laced the agent's voice. Mr. Devil Noir, you aren't intending to renege on our agreement, are you? Noir rolled his eyes. They haven't even paid yet, how can I renege? After the funds have been transferred, he stated, and after the news of my warlord appointment has been published in the newspapers, you'll receive further instructions. I will then disclose the method for the hostage exchange. The agent's expression darkened further. With Noir dictating the terms, he wasn't certain if Fleet Admiral Sengoku's plans would remain viable. It seemed the Admiral's planned retaliation might be thwarted before it even began. This Devil Noir, cunning as a fox, was always several steps ahead. The masked agent felt a pang of unease, his faith in the government wavering. Was recruiting this defiant and unpredictable criminal into the warlords a good decision? Noir and the government finally reached an agreement. For the time being, the Marines would cease their pursuit of him. However, Noir didn't believe Sengoku would give up so easily. Despite being known as the strategist, Sengoku wasn't a pushover, easily manipulated by Noir. As he watched the Marines, led by Kizaru, slowly withdraw, Noir and the underworld pirates breathed a collective sigh of relief. Without a secure base, constantly being hunted by the Marines was no easy feat. The brief but intense standoff had ended with Noir capturing Z, forcing the Marines to retreat. The various factions observing the situation in Sabaody were stunned. A former admiral and a current admiral, how did Noir manage to win? Under the odd gazes of the Sabaody residents, Noir disembarked and checked into a local hotel. He dispatched his crew to sail the ship away and find a skilled coding mechanic on the island. Noir specifically instructed them to report back if they encountered a silver-haired, bespectacled old man with a strong, refined aura. He was, of course, looking for Rayleigh. He had been on Sabaody for a while now, but he hadn't found Shaki's bar, let alone Rayleigh. With his system upgrade still a long way off, Noir decided to use this time to prepare for future endeavors. He needed Shirahoshi's talent, Rayleigh's talent, and… As Noir was lost in thought, a knock came at the door, followed by a familiar voice. Captain, the Kuja pirates are here. Their captain, Boa Hancock, wishes to see you. Noir paused, a smirk spreading across his face. Talk about convenient. He hadn't yet obtained Hancock's talent or the reward for meeting her. It was the old fish man, Puff, at the door. Although he didn't want to be a pirate, he was eager to serve Noir as a steward, handling various tasks. Noir had allowed him to stay. "Bring them to the main hall. I'll be there shortly," Noir instructed Puff. Puff bowed and left. Noir composed himself, preparing to meet the Empress. He knew exactly what Hancock wanted to ask him, but he was more interested in what rewards the system would offer. Noir left his room and headed towards the reception hall downstairs. He had commandeered this luxurious hotel on the island. The hotel owner, clearly not a man of integrity, had fled without demanding payment upon learning Noir's identity. Almost everyone involved in large-scale businesses on Sabaody Archipelago had dabbled in the slave trade, a practice that the underworld pirates vehemently opposed. Noir had replaced the hotel staff with his own crew. In the hall, the alluring Boa Hancock sat on a plush sofa, calmly watching Noir approach. As Noir drew closer, even Hancock, who had seen her fair share of powerful and influential figures, was momentarily stunned. "This man is quite handsome," Hancock inwardly appraised him. Enhanced by his otherworldly conqueror talent, Noir exuded an aura of charisma, mystery and power. While Hancock's reaction was subtle, her crewmates were less composed. Coming from Amazon Lily, a nation of women, they rarely had the chance to see men, unless they were part of the Kuja pirates. Whispers rippled through Hancock's crew. "What a handsome man, look at his eyes. His lips are so sexy, I want to pry them open and take a look. You perverts, stop staring at his face. I think Devil Noir's physique is also quite impressive, especially." Silence. Hancock's sharp reprimand silenced the girls, who were on the verge of drooling over Noir. Noir sat across from Hancock and got straight to the point. "Boa Hancock, what is the purpose of your visit?" Mahawk had helped Noir disrupt the battle alongside Hancock, then left without a word, in typical Mahawk fashion. Hancock, on the other hand, had waited until Noir finished negotiating with the government before paying him a visit. Hancock's expression was complex. Despite preparing herself mentally, now that she was face to face with him, she didn't know how to begin. Being taken as a slave was the deepest, most painful scar in Hancock's heart, a secret she desperately wanted to keep hidden. Now, having to reveal that wound to a stranger was almost impossible. Seeing Hancock's hesitation, Noir remained silent. He couldn't speak for her. Doing so would only make her more guarded. An awkward silence filled the room. Hancock struggled to find the right words, while Noir admired her long legs. Legs for days. Hancock's beauty is one thing, but her figure is really something. The silence in the hall was so profound that even the drop of a pin could be heard. Hancock's younger sister, Marigold, blinked her large eyes and whispered to Sandersonia. "Do you think sister has fallen for Devil Noir?" Sandersonia looked at her in surprise. "No way, but now that you mention it, he's not bad. Strong, handsome, he's almost as good as sister." Though their voices were low, Noir and Hancock, with their enhanced senses, heard every word. Noir looked at Sandersonia and Marigold with amusement, his gaze causing the two sisters to blush. Hancock sighed and decided to start from the beginning. "I have a question for you. How did you manage to kidnap the celestial dragons?" During the standoff with the Marines, Hancock had witnessed Noir pulling celestial dragons out of a mirror and skillfully using them to negotiate with the government. Kidnapping celestial dragons and incurring the wrath of the Marines seemed like the most logical explanation. The earlier news from Sabaody Archipelago must have been true. Noir had kidnapped at least 2 celestial dragons. A brave man. Noir smiled faintly. "How did I kidnap them? I went to the place with the most celestial dragons and took them, of course." A chill ran down Hancock's spine. The place with the most celestial dragons, wasn't that Mary Joieuse, the Holy Land, the very place that held her childhood trauma? "You infiltrated Mary Joieuse and kidnapped 2 celestial dragons?" Hancock couldn't contain her shock, her voice rising in disbelief. Her crewmates behind her held their breath. It was time to show off. The familiar background music played in Noir's head. He resisted the urge to light a cigarette and said in a nonchalant tone, "To be precise, it wasn't just 2. During my little escapade in Mary Joieuse, I captured 37 celestial dragons. 37 celestial dragons." Hancock's red lips parted slightly as she stared at Noir, dumbfounded by his audacious claim. He must be bluffing. Kidnapping 37 celestial dragons and living to tell the tale? Hancock's expression turned cold. Noir, sensing her disbelief, shrugged. "It's understandable that you wouldn't believe me. Such a claim would sound preposterous to any sane person." With time to spare, Noir gestured for his crew to bring tea and calmly explained the events that had transpired. It wasn't a secret, after all. All these citizens and cowards treated it as taboo. As Noir recounted his exploits in Mary Joieuse, Hancock's expression shifted from indifference to fascination, and finally, to utter astonishment. Devil Noir had replicated Fisher Tiger's legendary feat. liberating a significant portion of Mary Geoise's slaves. No, in some ways, Noir's actions surpassed even Tiger's. Mary Geoise wasn't the same as it had been years ago. Its defenses were far stronger, the reinforcements much quicker. It wasn't something achievable through sheer brute force and righteous fury. Yet, Noir had escaped. He'd escaped from 2 admirals. Even Hancock herself couldn't have pulled that off. Devil Noir, he's powerful, Hancock thought, awed by his strength. Noir, however, felt a twinge of embarrassment. Surviving a confrontation with 2 admirals wasn't easy, but Kizaru had barely lifted a finger, and Aokiji's powers were countered by his Amaterasu. Even then, their escape had been a harrowing experience. Those overpowered protagonists from isekai stories would probably laugh at him. Hancock looked at Puff, who was standing next to Noir, and asked hesitantly, "So, he and the rest of your crew are also?" Noir nodded, readily admitting the truth. Yes, they were once slaves. But now, they've left their past behind and placed themselves under my protection. Hancock's body trembled involuntarily at the word, slaves. It was the word she and her sisters hated most, a constant reminder of their past trauma. The very idea of slavery had become a deep-seated fear, a wound that wouldn't heal. Noir, noticing Hancock's reaction, asked with concern, "Are you alright?" Hancock's usually radiant face was now clouded with a mix of emotions. "I'm fine," she murmured. Puff frowned. Hancock's reaction to the word, slaves, reminded him of the people Noir had rescued. Could it be that the world's most beautiful woman was once a? Puff's heart skipped a beat. He stepped forward and whispered in Noir's ear. "Captain, something seems to be troubling Hancock. Perhaps you should speak with her privately?" The Empress hadn't come to see Noir just to ask about Mary Geoise. Considering her reaction, Puff was certain that the ensuing conversation wasn't meant for his ears. Noir understood. He softened his voice and addressed Hancock gently. "Boa, could we speak privately?" Hancock looked up, surprised. "What did you just call me?" Noir felt a wave of awkwardness wash over him. He scratched his head. "Boa, do you mind if I call you that?" Back in his previous life, when chatting with his friends about One Piece, he'd often referred to Hancock by her last name. It felt more familiar. He used to hold his Hancock figurine and declare, "This is my wife, don't look at Boa, I'll turn you to stone." Recalling his past Chunibyo behavior made him want to curl up in a ball and flush himself down the toilet. Now, seeing Hancock in person, he didn't feel so much attracted to her as mortified by his past actions. However, to Hancock, Noir's behavior seemed like that of a shy young man. His gaze, while not entirely innocent, was at least genuine. Hancock, who usually detested men, felt no such aversion towards Noir. Instead, she experienced a strange, unfamiliar emotion. It was a sort of budding admiration. Perhaps it was because Noir had saved slaves, defied the world government, and even killed celestial dragons. All things she had longed to do but never did. A faint smile played on Hancock's lips. "It's fine," she said softly. "You can call me that." Noir nodded happily. He'd always thought Hancock had a rather volatile temper, judging by the anime, but she seemed surprisingly gentle in person. Though, for a woman, she had a rather imposing presence. Just then, the system's voice startled him. Important character encountered. Reward issued. Bewitching Eyes, 1x Universal Talent Replication Card. Wasn't the system supposed to be offline for an upgrade? How can it still issue rewards? Noir tried to access the system, but there was no response. It seemed the system's offline state only affected the replication function. Other features could still be passively activated. Noir nodded in satisfaction and turned his attention to the rewards. Bewitching Eyes. Noir cringed internally. The name sounded incredibly cheesy. But when he saw the ability's description, his opinion changed instantly. Bewitching Eyes. The user's eyes can activate a bewitching gaze. Any enemy who makes eye contact with the user and feels even the slightest attraction will be instantly trapped in an illusion. A word of caution. The content of the illusion is not under the user's control, and interesting things may occur. Experience it for yourself. Noir ignored the system's cryptic warning. The ability itself was incredibly powerful. With Puff constantly enhancing his appearance and charm, and now this bewitching gaze, he wasn't sure about the effect on men, but its influence on women would be undeniable. One look, and they'd be lost in an illusion. The bewitching gaze shared a similar activation condition with Hancock's Mero Mero no Mi. The target needed to feel at least a flicker of attraction towards him. For people, this ability might be useless, but for Hancock, a woman of unparalleled beauty, activating it would be child's play. As for the interesting things that might occur, the system hadn't mentioned any danger, so it shouldn't be anything too bad, right? Despite a nagging sense of foreboding, Noir couldn't imagine anything going terribly wrong. He'd have to test it out on someone later. It was best not to experiment with this new ability on Robin or the others. Right, Tashigi and Ain. They're enemies, so it shouldn't be a problem. I'll try it out on them someday. Noir led Hancock to a side room off the main hall, a guest room used for receiving visitors. Outside, the elderly fishman, Puff, maintained a stern facade while attending to the boisterous Kuja pirates. As soon as Noir entered the room, he used his system's appraisal on Hancock. A list of talents appeared before him. Name: Boa Hancock, world-renowned beauty, charm, gold quality, possesses one of the most beautiful faces in the world. With age, her beauty and figure will become even more captivating, reaching its peak at 25. Men's resistance to her beauty decreases by 50% to 100% depending on the circumstances. Pirate Empress. Red quality: as a woman, she possesses a sharp, perceptive, and resilient mind, with the bearing of a queen among snakes. Her physique combines serpentine flexibility and strength. Her aptitude for physical combat surpasses all other women in the world. She also possesses a deep understanding of hockey. She is destined to face great hardship, but will ultimately survive, awakening and enhancing her conqueror's hockey after the ordeal. Demon Host. Mero Mero. Red quality: having consumed the Mero Mero no Mi, a paramecia-type devil fruit, she is imbued with a demonic power, able to charm and petrify her enemies. Sea's Rejection. Purple quality: while gaining power from the devil fruit, she is also cursed by it. This curse causes her to be rejected by the sea. Contact with seawater weakens her and prevents her from actively using her abilities. As Noir had expected, Hancock's talents were all geared towards women. Even if his system's copy function was still active, he wouldn't be able to replicate anything useful. However, judging by the talents displayed by the system, Hancock's strengths clearly revolved around her beauty. The only talent purely focused on combat enhancement was Pirate Empress. This suggested that Hancock's fighting style capitalized on her natural gifts: advanced hockey and exceptional physical skills, complemented by her unparalleled beauty and charm. Even without resorting to the underworld, Noir was confident he could defeat Hancock in a straight fight based on pure strength. Following Noir into the guest room, Hancock found herself alone with him. Away from the watchful eyes of her crew, she relaxed visibly. Noticing her change in demeanor, Noir teased her with a smile. "Being an empress must be tough. You always seem so tired." Hancock quickly regained her composure, resuming her haughty demeanor. She lifted her chin. "It's nothing. Just managing a bunch of useless fools." Ouch. She doesn't mince words. This was more like the Hancock he'd expected. Earlier, she had been so captivated by his words that her usual imperial bearing had been absent. Her appearance was that of a goddess surveying a wasteland, a disdainful glance seeming like a blessing. Even with her conceit, it was hard to feel any resentment towards her. But Noir felt that this outward display of pride and coldness was a facade, a shield protecting a vulnerable heart. Even as a renowned empress with status and territory, a woman could ultimately rely only on her own strength. In this, she was similar to Robin. Both had fought tooth and nail for survival, one with her intellect, the other with her might. Noir smiled and shook his head, his voice gentle, like an old friend. "You seem quite interested in my Mary Joie's escapade. Care to share why?" Hancock fell silent. Speaking about it might offer a flicker of light in her carefully guarded heart, but in the end, she maintained her facade, letting out a cold huff. "I just wished to know which newcomer was foolish enough to challenge the world government." Hancock's attitude wavered between vulnerability and defiance. Noir, realizing she wasn't ready to discuss her past as a slave, decided not to press the issue. There was no need to rush. This was their first meeting. He couldn't expect her to bare her soul immediately. Seeing that Noir had dropped the subject, Hancock regained her imperial confidence. "May I see the celestial dragons you captured?" Noir looked at her playfully. "Do you want to kill a few for fun?" Hancock's expression remained unchanged. "Is that not permitted?" Noir rested his chin on his hand. "Of course not. They're my merchandise. Each one is worth 7 billion berries." Hancock let out a long breath, a faint, bitter smile touching her lips. "Very well. Selling them as merchandise is a form of revenge in itself." Noir looked at her in surprise. "You don't think I'd actually hand them over like that, do you?" Hancock blinked. "What do you intend to do?" Noir toyed with a shadow in his hand, a thoughtful expression on his face. "I need some insurance. Something to hold over the government's head when my forces are strong enough and I decide to lead the warlords." Hancock, her sharp mind catching the implications of his words, said, "You're selling the celestial dragons to the government, and in exchange for the money, they offered you a position as a warlord?" Noir nodded. "Precisely. That's why I need to take some precautions. If the government decides to go back on their word, I'll have leverage." Hancock, intrigued, twirled a lock of her dark hair around her finger, her eyes sparkling with interest. "In that case, I'm rather curious about your plan." Their conversation ended, and Noir led the Kuja pirates back to the shore. The familiar black mist of the underworld spread, and Noir boarded Hancock's warship, the perfume Yuta, sailing it into the mist. As the Kuja pirates watched in amazement, the environment shifted dramatically. They were entering Noir's secret base for the first time. Within the realm of the underworld, Noir was an absolute god. Anyone from the outside world who entered had to bow down. Hancock observed her surroundings warily. This ability must have been crucial in her escape from the government's relentless pursuit. She had heard rumors about the unprecedented copy fruit. With enough resources, a single user could potentially wield the power of every devil fruit in existence. This was why Noir's abilities constantly evolved, making it impossible for the Marines to keep track. Judging from his previous battles, he had already copied the abilities of the Marine Admirals Aokiji and Kizaru. Noir smiled but remained silent. Let them think what they want. Many aspects of the talent system resembled devil fruit powers. It was a convenient cover story, and the Marines and the government had bought it hook, line, and sinker. Warning the Kuja pirates to avoid looking at the sea, Noir used his power to transport the perfume Yuta directly to Thriller Bark. As they disembarked on Thriller Bark, Hancock couldn't help but feel a sense of disbelief. So that's why there was a vacant warlord position for Noir. He had defeated Moria and taken over his territory. Noir led Hancock and her group to where the celestial dragons were being held. It was the darkest, most desolate part of the ancient castle, a place Noir had been using as a prison. Over 30 celestial dragons were confined there. A faint sliver of light penetrated the gloomy chamber. The celestial dragons, seeing the opening door, felt not relief, but a surge of terror. Their eyes widened in fear. Being locked up was one thing, but if that devil came. As if summoned by their dread, Noir stepped into the room, his handsome face, the last thing they wanted to see, coming into view. Hancock stood outside the door, pressed against the wall. She didn't want to lay eyes on the celestial dragons, perhaps afraid that, in a fit of rage, she might lash out, and no one would be able to stop her. Noir looked at them with a cold smile, releasing a hint of his Haoshoku haki. Panic flashed across the celestial dragons' faces before they collapsed unconscious. What he was about to do next couldn't be witnessed by the celestial dragons themselves. Noir looked down at the shadows on the ground, lost in thought. The same old trick. He'd cut out their shadows, replace them with fabricated ones, and create remotely controlled assassins. He had spent considerable time refining this technique, and he could now perform even more intricate manipulations without fear of the government's countermeasures. Even if they were kept in a place without sunlight, Noir could directly control their shadows, forcing them to commit suicide. Since he was the only one in the world with the cage no mi, and it was unlikely another would appear, he could use its powers without restraint. Looking at the unconscious celestial dragons, Noir smiled with satisfaction. Though he'd used this trick against the Marines before, it was still incredibly effective. He clapped his hands. There. Even if they're not within my sight, I can kill them at any moment. Hancock, silent for a moment, spoke from the doorway. Do you have a grudge against the celestial dragons? Noir paused, considering his answer. I suppose I do. They tried to harm Enel. That's when our real conflict began. Hancock looked at him with newfound respect. You confronted the celestial dragons just for your crewmate? Noir reflected on his journey so far. It seems that way, but I also despise them. His initial reason for kidnapping the celestial dragons had been largely for Enel's sake. Even the ransom demand had been to reassure him. Although Enel had initially wanted to escape, his temper hadn't subsided much, but he was now willing to stand up for his crewmates. So, Noir was happy to avenge Enel. And later, after kidnapping the celestial dragons from Mary Joieuse and intending to retreat, Wiper's compassion had led them to free the slaves. Noir chuckled. Honestly, I was worried about fighting the government, but my crew is sometimes even more reckless than I am. They managed to get my blood boiling too. Hancock crossed her arms, her gaze lowered. You have good companions. Noir beamed with pride, as if someone had complimented his own children. Of course, I do. Hancock smiled and shook her head, saying nothing. Noir's handling of the celestial dragons eased her conscience considerably. Even if they were bargaining chips, she would have felt uneasy if they'd been returned unharmed after all the trouble they'd caused. Just then, a muffled yell echoed through the hallway. Captain, and %%. Noir and Hancock turned to see Wiper, a look of exasperation on his face, supporting a heavily bandaged figure. The bandaged man stared blankly at Noir, his mouth agape. Noir, after a moment of confusion, pointed at the bandaged man. Enel, why are you even more bandaged up? Enel's face, barely visible beneath the bandages, contorted in frustration. Wiper explained. Enel went to the treasury and took an expensive crown. He then decided it would be a good idea to flaunt it in front of Lucci. Lucci got annoyed, and well. Noir covered his face with his hand, sighing. Let me guess. Lucci took advantage of Enel's injuries and beat him up. Wiper nodded sheepishly, adding with an awkward laugh. Then he came and showed it off to me, so I also. Hancock gave Noir a, your crew is a bunch of savages. Look, Noir chuckled nervously, unable to offer a good explanation. Despite the 2 beatings, Enel seemed surprisingly energetic. He pointed at Noir, then at Hancock, gesticulating wildly. %%. You betrayed Hash and Noir and Hancock tilted their heads in unison, puzzled. What is he saying? Wiper, standing beside Enel, translated with a straight face. He said, "You've disappointed me. How could you betray Robin?" Noir waved his hand dismissively. "Boa is my friend. How is that betraying Robin?" Hancock's expression turned complex. "You have a wife?" They'd only known each other for a short time, so it wasn't as if Hancock was genuinely jealous or heartbroken. But her current feeling was similar to that of a devoted fan whose idol suddenly announced their relationship, a sense of bewilderment and mild betrayal. Noir scratched his head, trying to explain. "While we are very close, we haven't officially defined our relationship." Enel. %#%. You #%#. Wiper immediately provided a translation, his voice stern. "A classic excuse. I'll tell Robin. USBAG, P2. Noir stared at Wiper, dumbfounded. How can you even understand that gibberish? Enel's sycophantic behavior stemmed from his keen observation. Noir was the heart of the crew. Everyone obeyed his orders, but who did the unruly Noir listen to? After careful observation, Enel concluded that only Robin held any sway over him. This was his chance. By using Robin's name, he could blackmail Noir and extort a fortune. As Enel imagined his riches, a cold sensation suddenly gripped his neck. Noir held his sword against Enel's throat, a gentle smile on his face. "What were you saying?" Enel, on second thought, fighting Noir directly isn't such a good idea. Hancock watched Noir and his 2 eccentric crewmates banter, a touch of envy in her eyes. They were so carefree, playing and joking around, yet fiercely loyal to each other in battle. They were a good crew. Just then, a few crewmates carrying construction lumber walked by, greeting Noir with smiles. Hancock paused. She'd noticed something. Among the people she'd met, including the members of the underworld pirates, none of them bore that tattoo. The hoof of the soaring dragon was a mark burned into the flesh of slaves by the celestial dragons. This mark of shame was incredibly difficult to remove. Even if the skin was peeled away, the brand remained, etched deep into the bone. The people Noir had rescued from Mary Joieuse all bore the hoof of the soaring dragon, a constant reminder of their humiliating past. Noir refused to let them carry this burden for the rest of their lives, even if it meant concealing the marks. He sought a way to erase them completely. With the scars gone and a powerful figure offering them protection, the freed slaves had recovered remarkably well. Their spirits were high, and there was no outward sign of their former enslavement. Hancock observed the passing individuals, a look of disbelief on her face. It wasn't possible that every single one of them had the mark hidden. "There's no mark." "Why?" Hancock was momentarily lost in thought. Noir, noticing her expression, explained, "I've erased the marks on their bodies." Hancock's head snapped towards him, her voice laced with a hint of excitement. "You can completely remove the hoof of the soaring dragon?" Noir smiled and nodded. "It's a sort of cosmetic surgery, a healing technique, quite useful." As he spoke, Noir felt his arms suddenly grasped. Hancock's captivating face was inches from his, her voice urgent. "Can you help me? I also—" She stopped abruptly, the initial joy replaced by a complex mix of emotions. "I also—" Hancock tightened her grip on his arms. Noir, understanding her unspoken plea, gently placed a hand on her smooth hair. Feels like petting a large cat." He stroked her head softly. "I understand. Shall I help you?" Hancock trembled, her eyes wide with disbelief. He understands? Did he realize that I was also a slave? "Forgive me, Boa." Noir gently pulled Hancock into an embrace. Her soft form felt like a warm kitten in his arms, making him reluctant to let go. Hancock gasped, about to deliver a swift kick, when a wave of warmth washed over her back. A strange energy flowed from Noir's hand into her body. The warmth felt like a gentle hand caressing her back, bringing a wave of soothing pleasure that elicited a soft moan from Hancock. Hearing the sound, Noir's lips twitched in embarrassment. He quickly released her. Hancock's eyes were slightly unfocused, her voice laced with annoyance. "What are you doing?" Enel hopped around excitedly, while Wiper clapped his hands impassively. The women of the Kuja pirates gasped, their eyes sparkling with interest. A few even looked ready to draw their swords. Only Hancock's sisters watched Noir with complex expressions, unsure of what to say. Noir pointed to Hancock's back. "It should be gone now." Hancock instinctively reached back to cover her back. "What?" Noir lowered his voice. "Don't worry, I won't tell anyone." Within the underworld, a cool evening breeze, like the sigh of a night goddess, rippled across the sea, stirring Hancock's emotions. "Thank you." Hancock understood. He had erased the mark. It was still hard to believe that the hoof of the soaring dragon could be removed so easily, but with so many examples of his healing before her, she couldn't deny the truth. But Hancock eyed Noir suspiciously, her voice barely a whisper. "How did you know it was on my back?" Noir's expression froze. He whistled nonchalantly. "I didn't, I just guessed." Hancock stared at the clearly flustered Noir, then a smile softened her features. It didn't matter anymore. Even if he had investigated her past, it didn't change anything. Noir could have easily asked her to remove her clothes, using the healing as an excuse to see her naked. But he hadn't. He'd healed her mark through her clothing. He really acts like a gentleman. Fortunately, Noir couldn't hear Hancock's thoughts, or he would have burst into tears. It wasn't that he wasn't devious, he was simply too straightforward. Hancock's beautiful eyes sparkled as she smiled seductively. "Noir-sama is a very gentle man." "Noir-sama? That's a respectful title, right? And isn't gentle a common trait among harem protagonists in anime?" "Well, he'll take it as a compliment." Noir extended a hand. "Then we're friends now." His dark eyes held a mysterious allure, drawing Hancock in like a whirlpool. She found it difficult to meet his gaze. Looking away, she shyly took his hand, a haughty hum escaping her lips. But Noir could have sworn he saw a blush on her face as she turned away. After a long and eventful day, the Kuja pirates decided to stay the night on Thriller Bark. That evening, Noir hosted a banquet, warmly welcoming the Kuja pirates. The rough-and-tumble members of the underworld pirates, encountering an all-female pirate crew for the first time, put on their best behavior, acting like perfect gentlemen. The banquet turned into a social mixer. Noir understood the feeling. No matter how unkempt they were around their crewmates, with a group of women present, appearances mattered. Hancock maintained her aloof and regal demeanor, seemingly detached from the lively atmosphere. But Robin, sitting beside Noir, narrowed her eyes. She could sense Hancock stealing glances at her. Robin was well aware of Hancock's title as the world's most beautiful woman, but she couldn't figure out when Hancock and Noir had become so close. And based on Robin's keen intuition, the Empress seemed to have feelings for Noir? Hancock, in turn, observed Robin. So this is the rumored, yet unconfirmed, wife of the underworld pirates captain. She's beautiful, but not as beautiful as me. The Empress played with a strand of her long, flowing hair, a narcissistic thought crossing her mind. Robin and Hancock's gazes locked, an unspoken rivalry crackling in the air. Even the rowdy crew members sensed the tension and quieted down. As for Noir, caught in the middle of this unspoken battle, what was he thinking? He gnawed on a large piece of meat, his mind preoccupied with his new ability. I wonder what the world looks like through bewitching eyes. The underworld river was perpetually shrouded in darkness, the eerie, boundless sea exuding an aura of terror. Yet, within the brightly lit castle of Thriller Bark, the home of its eccentric master, a strangely cozy atmosphere prevailed. At the banquet hosted for the Kuja pirates, both the underworld and Kuja pirates were buzzing with anticipation. They had expected a dramatic showdown, a real-life soap opera, but the main character in question, Noir, was remarkably oblivious, happily enjoying his meal amidst the charged atmosphere. Robin gracefully served him food, a smug smile playing on her lips. She knew Noir well. They had been together for so long, and he hadn't shown any romantic interest in anyone else. How could he be so easily swayed? Despite her confidence, a pang of insecurity tugged at her heart. Conus, feeding Sue a small treat, blinked innocently. It seems like Robin doesn't really like Empress Hancock. Khalifa, adjusting her glasses, chuckled wryly. Well, Robin's feelings for the captain are quite. Manlif, the giantess, poked her head in through the window, her voice soft. I think it's pretty obvious too. The captain wouldn't be interested in giants, would he? Khalifa's eyebrows twitched. I don't know. But Captain is quite handsome, and he has such a great personality, Conus added with a cheerful smile as she passed a plate of food to Manlif. Khalifa sighed discreetly. Besides Robin, Conus also had a soft spot for Noir, and there were others. As the lively banquet progressed, the focus seemed to shift. Not much food was consumed, but a significant portion of the guests became quite intoxicated. When everyone was finally tired, Noir, seemingly unaffected by the festivities, arranged rooms for the Kuja pirates. Hancock retired to a side chamber to rest. Noir dismissed his own crew as well, and the hall fell silent. Suddenly, a rhythmic tapping sound echoed from the floor, growing closer and closer, heading towards Noir. Noir smiled, his eyes lighting up. So, have you made your decision? Will you join us? Noir had offered Isho, aka Fujitora, a place on Thriller Bark. The blind swordsman seemingly lost in deep thought. Isho's stern face reflected a mixture of emotions, but after a moment, he spoke with firm resolve. I admire your methods, and I am willing to join your crew. Just as Noir was about to celebrate, Isho continued, however, I have 3 conditions. As long as you abide by them, I swear my loyalty. So, if our ideals clash, he'll leave without hesitation? Interesting, Noir's eyes narrowed, his smile fading as he turned serious. Tell me your conditions. First, your pirate crew will undoubtedly engage in profitable ventures. But I ask that your business dealings have a moral compass. No slave trading, and absolutely no child trafficking. That was a given. Once Noir established his kingdom, he would certainly engage in commerce. But slave trading and child trafficking were lines he would never cross. Back in his previous life, Noir's neighbor had been a kind mid-50 woman. She often brought him food, played with him, and told him stories when his parents were away. The woman had been a constant presence throughout his childhood, like a true family member. But one day, she disappeared. Noir heard from others that her granddaughter had been kidnapped by human traffickers. He never saw the woman again. The memory remained etched in his heart. So, even after crossing over to this world, after all the adventures and hardships he'd faced, even as his heart hardened, he would never engage in such despicable acts. Noir nodded solemnly. I agree, I won't touch such vile business. Isho continued, second, do not harm civilians indiscriminately, unless they pose a direct threat to the crew's safety or interests. Noir agreed to this as well. As long as they didn't provoke him, he had no desire to bully the defenseless. It wasn't just morally wrong, it was also cowardly. Of course, celestial dragons were an exception. Finally, Isho stated his last condition. Third, never forget the justice you hold in your heart now, Captain. Never lose sight of your initial principles. Noir paused, then chuckled softly. This last condition would be the hardest to keep. Perhaps, in the future, he too would be blinded by power and wealth. It was good to have someone to remind him of his values. Isho bowed deeply, his voice filled with conviction. If you violate any of these three conditions, Captain, I will leave the underworld pirates without hesitation and do everything in my power to set you straight. Noir patted his cheeks, forcing a smile. Those are harsh words, Uncle Isho. But I suppose I'll consider it tough love. Alright, welcome to the crew. Isho nodded politely, a gentle smile gracing his lips. Noir grinned, satisfied. It had been a slightly convoluted process, but he had finally convinced Isho to join. This would elevate the underworld pirates to a whole new level. After all, Isho was a future admiral, a formidable force to be reckoned with. Enel's position as the second strongest was no longer secure. With the addition of a new member, Isho and Noir talked late into the night. Noir explained the crew's history, structure, and roles. Noir was the captain and primary decision-maker, Robin served as his second-in-command, Konis was the chef and musician, and the main fighters included Enel, Wiper, and Lucci. Lucci and the former CP9 agents also acted as intelligence gatherers, and Enel doubled as the Arc Maxim's power source. These were the core members and the basic structure of the underworld pirates. Isho committed their names and roles to memory. In the timeless domain of the underworld, Noir lost track of how many questions Isho asked. By the time Isho left, Noir's head was spinning. While Isho was a man of few words when he was being cool, he could be surprisingly talkative about certain things. Puff, the fish man, silently approached Noir. Captain, would you like something to drink? Noir rubbed his eyes. A cup of coffee, please. I still have some unfinished business. Puff quickly brought him a cup. Noir sipped his coffee as he walked towards the prison cells. This was where he held the captured Marine officers. The regular soldiers were kept elsewhere. Noir opened the door and saw the Marines sitting dejectedly on the ground, their eyes vacant as they counted ants. He quietly took out the mirror. Time to test the power of these alluring eyes and see if they can be used in combat. I'll choose Momoshagi. She was quite aggressive during our fight and kept trying to sneak attack me. Noir activated the mirror. Guyon's consciousness flowed out of the mirror and into him. Guyon's beautiful eyes gradually regained their focus. As she recognized the man standing before her, her heart skipped a beat. She reached for her sword, only to realize it was gone. She looked up and met his gaze, a pair of mesmerizing pink eyes that radiated an irresistible charm. Her dark, bright eyes transformed into a soft pink, radiating an alluring charm. Guion, also known as Momoshagi, was startled. Was this another one of Devil Noir's new abilities? But it seemed like only his eyes had changed color. Noir stared intently for a long moment, then scratched his head in confusion. Why hadn't it worked on Guion? Oh, right. The target has to be at least somewhat attracted to me for it to work. But after capturing so many Marines, they were definitely enemies. There was no way she would be attracted to him. Noir, his pink eyes gleaming, tapped his chin thoughtfully. While his eye ability was similar to Boa Hancock's Mero Mero no Mi, there was a key difference: gender. Men tended to fall in love more easily, sometimes at first sight. It was in their nature, nothing to be ashamed of. Women, however, were more emotionally complex. While there were exceptions, it was generally harder for them to fall in love, unless there was a genuine connection. So, Guion, a career-driven, strong woman in a life-or-death situation, was unlikely to fall for her enemy. Simply put, Noir's current charm wasn't on par with Hancock's. He couldn't achieve that level of universal allure. After a moment of contemplation, Noir sighed. He would have to rely on his Oscar-worthy acting skills. Guillaume, he began, his face etched with melancholy, there's something I need to tell you. Guillaume's wariness remained unchanged. Get on with it, she snapped. How rude, Noir's lips twitched. He let out a dramatic sigh and turned his back to her. Just go. Guillaume was taken aback. He was letting her go? Impossible. This had to be another one of Devil Noir's tricks. Looking at her unconscious comrades, Guillaume desperately tried to wake them. Z, if I can just wake him up, we still have a chance to escape. Noir, sensing her intentions, said, they won't wake up without my help. Guillaume clenched her teeth. Why did you only wake me up? Noir brushed his bangs aside, his voice tinged with sadness, because I don't want you to get hurt. Guillaume stared at him, bewildered. Huh? Noir, still facing away from her, began to narrate a tale of unrequited love. Once upon a time, there was a handsome young boy. His village was raided by bandits, a massacre that left many dead and the streets stained with blood. The boy was discovered by the bandits. Just as they were about to kill him, a brave young woman appeared. Guillaume blinked. Was he talking about her? Had they met before? Had she saved him? Noir smirked inwardly. They had, of course, never met. But Guillaume, as a marine, had saved countless lives over the years. Surely there were a few whose faces she couldn't quite recall. Noir was now playing the part of one of those people. The woman wore a marine's coat of justice and carried a famous blade at her waist. Her presence was unmatched. With a few swift strikes, she defeated the bandits who had invaded the village. In that moment, the boy fell in love with the marine who had saved him, vowing to marry her one day. Guillaume was skeptical. So, you're that boy, and the marine you loved was me? Noir nodded firmly. Yes. I've been searching for you ever since, hoping to make you my wife. Guillaume waved her hand dismissively. You mistaken me for someone else. I don't know you. And if you love marines so much, why did you become a pirate? Noir racked his brain for a plausible explanation. I wanted to join the marines, but my family treated me terribly, especially my sister. They sold me off. I became a pirate out of desperation. Guillaume was taken aback by the dramatic tale. She couldn't understand what Noir would gain by lying to her, so she decided to seize the opportunity. Alright, release us and I'll guarantee you a place in the Marines. Your past will be erased, and you can start over. As a vice admiral and potential admiral candidate, Guillaume believed she had the authority to pull some strings, though she rarely used such privileges. Noir looked up, feigning surprise, and took the opportunity to close the distance between them. He gently took her hand. Really? Guillaume was flustered by his touch but couldn't break free from his grip. She nodded, a blush creeping up her cheeks. Yes, but only if you're telling the truth. Of course, it's true. Noir held her cool hand firmly, his voice dripping with feigned affection. Then, will you marry me? Guillaume's heart skipped a beat. His determined face was so close, his strong, masculine aura washing over her. Her pupils dilated slightly. This was the effect he was aiming for. First, lower her guard, then make a bold move. Seizing the fleeting moment, Noir's peach-colored eyes glowed once more. This time, Guillaume completely souk-bed to their captivating allure. Her expression went blank, her body falling back involuntarily. Noir caught her in his arms. The activation conditions are a bit tricky, but the activation speed and duration are instantaneous. It's a perfect surprise attack in battle. But Noir looked down at the unconscious Momoshiki, her eyes still open. She looks the same as when she sees the waters of the underworld. No noticeable changes. Was that subtle thing the system mentioned something that would happen within Momoshiki's illusion? What could possibly be in there? As Noir examined Guillaume for any physical changes, Guillaume herself was lost in a bewildering dreamscape. Bathed in warm sunlight, a gentle breeze caressing her face, Guillaume stood on the deck of a marine warship, sailing across the azure sea. She looked around, confused. Wasn't she captured on Thriller Bark? How did she get here? And why was she smaller? Her body felt like it had reverted to several years ago, before she became a vice admiral. A marine soldier rushed towards her, his voice urgent. Ensign Guillaume. There's a village on that island being attacked by criminals. We're deploying immediately. Ensign? Why am I an ensign again? Though she didn't understand what was happening, the villagers were in danger. Guillaume wouldn't stand idly by. The warship cut through the waves, Guillaume and a large contingent of marines charging towards the smoke-filled village. Guillaume, drawing her katana, her beautiful face set in a grim expression, moved through the carnage, blood and gore splattering around her. Severed limbs flew through the air. With a flash of her blade, a man wielding a butcher knife was pierced through the heart. His weapon clattered to the ground, his body falling lifelessly. A young boy pushed the man's corpse aside, his bright eyes locking onto Guillaume as if she were a beacon of hope. No way, Guillaume stared at the dirty-faced boy, a sense of dread washing over her. Although the boy's face was youthful, Guillaume recognized him clearly. This was Devil Noir. the man who would one day plunge the world into chaos. This scene felt eerily similar to the story Noir himself had told. Could this be some sort of time warp? Guyon's face remained impassive as she approached Noir, her naginata, Kinemon, held at the ready. If I kill him now, the future criminal won't exist. Young Noir looked at Guyon approaching, his heart pounding in his chest. Such a beautiful woman. Guyon raised Kinemon, poised to strike Noir's neck. Noir showed no fear. Instead, his eyes were filled with admiration as he gazed at the ornate naginata. Wow, what a cool sword. Guyon hesitated, a flicker of uncertainty crossing her face. She knew this child would become Devil Noir, a formidable enemy of the Marines, but right now, he was an innocent, impressionable boy. Though Guyon was ruthless in battle, she was still a woman, not a heartless brute like Akainu. How could she bring herself to kill a child? Should she make him pay now for the evils he would commit in the future? A whirlwind of thoughts raced through Guion's mind. Slowly, she lowered her weapon, a change of heart taking hold. She would take him under her wing, guide him, and prevent him from ever becoming a pirate. Guyon crouched down, her stern features softening as she looked into Noir's eyes. Boy, she said gently, would you like to join the Marines? Noir was stunned, then his face lit up with joy. He nodded eagerly. Yes, I would. A satisfied smile graced Guion's lips. By bringing Devil Noir into the Marines, she would not only eliminate a future enemy but also gain a powerful asset. She would personally supervise Noir, ensuring he stayed on the right path. A small, warm hand slipped into hers. Noir, oblivious to the carnage surrounding them, smiled up at her. Guyon glanced at the bloody battlefield, then back at Noir. He truly is a future pirate. His courage sets him apart from ordinary children. And he's brave, too. Pink petals, seemingly appearing out of nowhere, drifted down from the smoke-filled sky, landing softly on Guyon's shoulder. Guyon picked up a petal, glanced at it, and tossed it aside. Meanwhile, outside the illusion, Noir was poking at the unresponsive Momoshagi, growing increasingly bored. Is the peach blossom illusion really that powerful? Guyon hasn't snapped out of it yet? His boredom turning to curiosity, he asked the system, what exactly does Momoshagi experience inside the peach blossom illusion? He hadn't expected a response, but the system's cold, mechanical voice suddenly answered. The peach blossom illusion makes many things seem plausible. The target will have significant interactions with the host and experience a lifetime together. During this lifetime, the illusion assists the host in a romantic pursuit. The target is highly likely to fall in love with the host, creating an idyllic world of love and happiness. Noir's eyes widened. Why didn't you tell me this before? The system paused briefly. You didn't ask. Noir groaned. You didn't tell me I could ask. The system hadn't explained this clearly during the initial introduction and was now blaming him for not asking. Noir looked at Guyon with concern. If she falls in love with me in the illusion, how will she return to reality? And what will happen when she does? Though the system's voice remained monotone, Noir could almost sense a hint of amusement. The illusion will break when the lifetime concludes or when the host dies. Alternatively, as time passes within the illusion, the target may begin to realize they're in an illusion. Upon returning to reality, the target will retain the feelings they developed in the illusion. The depth of these feelings varies depending on the situation. Noir pondered this. So, breaking the illusion is ridiculously simple. If I die, Guyon will be freed. They were mortal enemies. Guyon wouldn't be holding hands and strolling with him. She would attack him on sight, shattering the illusion instantly. Noir was slightly disappointed, but he quickly recovered. Despite its limitations, the technique was still incredibly useful in combat against opponents susceptible to beauty. Even a second of distraction in battle could be fatal. But why hadn't Guyon broken free yet? Didn't she want to kill him? Inside the peach blossom illusion, time flowed swiftly. Guyon, having taken Noir under her wing, had trained him into an exceptional Marine. At Marineford, on a newly constructed podium for young officers, promising Marines clad in Justice codes stood proudly, awaiting promotion and recognition. Commodore Noir. Step forward. Years had passed. Guyon, initially rejuvenated by the time warp, had matured once again into the beautiful woman she was. A warm smile graced her lips as she pinned the Commodore insignia onto Noir's chest. Congratulations. From seaman recruit to Commodore in just a few years, Noir, hailed as the strongest newcomer, had become a pillar of the Marines. Rumors circulated that Fleet Admiral Sengoku intended to groom this youngest ever Commodore for future admiral rank, perhaps even Fleet Admiral. Under the envious gazes of countless Marine officers, Noir officially became a Commodore, a key figure among the Marines' fighting force. Noir fiddled with the insignia on his chest, pouting, "This thing is ugly." Guyon playfully poked his head. "Don't be silly. You're a Commodore now. You can't be as reckless as before." Noir placed his hands behind his head, grinning. "I understand. I won't worry, little Guyon." Guyon punched him lightly in the stomach. Call me Guillaume-senpai, show some respect. Noir clutched his stomach dramatically. Little Guillaume is still so violent. I doubt anyone besides me would dare marry you. Seeing Guillaume's rising temper, Noir quickly jumped off the podium and fled. The Marines below, waiting for Noir's acceptance speech, were left bewildered. From the fleet admiral's platform above, Sengoku rubbed his temples with a sigh. That boy is still as unruly as ever. If Guillaume hadn't brought him into the Marines, he would have become a menace. Chief of Staff Suru frowned as she looked at Guillaume below, a worried expression on her face. Ever since Guillaume brought Noir back that year, I felt something's been off about her. Sengoku nodded in agreement. Indeed. She's become much more reserved, and it feels like she's hiding something from us. Guillaume watched Noir's retreating figure, a gentle smile playing on her lips. Noir had grown up alongside her, becoming her childhood friend. He would no longer pose a threat to the world. Perhaps this was the best outcome. But Guillaume looked up at the sky, a sense of unease washing over her. A single petal, seemingly appearing out of thin air, landed in her palm. The illusion's fabricated reality had made her subconsciously overlook this anomaly. A strange feeling of emptiness filled her heart, an emotion she couldn't quite place. Had she truly traveled back in time, or was this all a dream? Where were these falling peach petals coming from? If this was all fake, then her relationship with Noir, was it fake too? Guillaume sat in her office, meticulously polishing her katana. As a candidate for admiral, Guillaume was an exceptionally powerful swordswoman, her strength surpassing most vice admirals. Coupled with what she believed to be time travel, her combat experience was now almost unmatched within the Marines. Knock, knock, knock. A measured knock echoed from the door. Guillaume quickly rose and opened it. As expected, it was Vice Admiral Suru. Suru and Guillaume shared a close bond, almost like family. Guillaume often confided in Suru whenever she was troubled. Suru settled into a chair, a gentle smile on her face. You asked to see me? What's on your mind? Guillaume sat opposite her, a troubled expression on her face. After a moment of hesitation, she asked, Suru-san, is there any devil fruit ability that can rewind the world back several years? Suru's eyes widened, and she shook her head firmly, no. The time-related devil fruit abilities I know of can only affect the user's personal timeline. Rewinding the entire world is impossible. Guillaume's face fell. Then, is Noir real or not? Suru, seeing her distressed expression, chuckled. What's this? Are you getting cold feet about the wedding? Guillaume's eyes widened, and she retorted, Suru-san, I would never marry him. Suru shook her head, a knowing smile playing on her lips as she watched Guillaume's flustered reaction. The year Guillaume had brought Noir back, a true little devil had been unleashed upon the Marineford training camp. On his first day, this troublemaker had taken down his superior officer and then, leading a group of recruits, single-handedly wiped out a pirate crew with a bounty over 100 million berries. From that day forward, Noir had caught the attention of both Garp and Zephyr. His strength grew exponentially each year, and his career within the Marines skyrocketed. Suru still remembered the day Noir defeated every single recruit in the training camp. He stood before them, brimming with confidence, and declared, I joined the Marines for 2 reasons. 1. To make Guillaume my wife. 2. To become Guillaume's husband. Needless to say, his declaration had caused quite a stir. Many Marines at headquarters had been vying for Guillaume's affection, and Noir had instantly made enemies of them all. The most persistent of these rivals had been Tokikaki, now a candidate for admiral. But even Tokikaki hadn't been able to gain any ground against the cunning Noir. It wasn't until Guillaume herself intervened that the commotion finally died down. Gossip was human nature, after all. Suru, her eyes twinkling with amusement, asked, Do you not have feelings for Noir? Guillaume instinctively stood up, but then sat back down, her shoulders slumping. Maybe, a little. Suru nodded, satisfied. In all the years Noir had been in the Marines, proclaiming his desire to marry Guillaume, she had never truly rebuked him. There were even rumors that they had secretly gotten engaged, unbeknownst to the Marine higher-ups. Suru wouldn't believe there wasn't something going on between them. But then, a frown creased her brow. Then what's holding you back? You seem afraid of being with him. Guillaume struggled internally for a long time before finally revealing the secret that had been weighing on her heart. She recounted Noir's story, both past and present, and explained her current predicament. Suru listened, her worldview shaken to its core. Suru stared at her hands in disbelief, then quickly regained her composure. If it's an illusion, then the solution is simple. Guillaume looked up at Suru, her eyes questioning. Suru met her gaze. Kill him, and you'll be free. Kill Noir. Guillaume looked at the katana in her hands, her expression conflicted. Without the barrier of opposing factions, and after so many years together, Guillaume had come to realize that Noir wasn't a bad person. He was carefree and easygoing, but he had his own unique sense of justice. Initially, he hadn't even raised a blade to kill, and even after gaining immense power, he still held a reverence for life. Noir saw Guillaume, who had saved him, as his light, and Guillaume, in turn, had grown attached to him. A flicker of hope remained in Guillaume's heart. Suru-san, could he be wrong? Perhaps, it really is just. Suru frowned at Guillaume and sighed as she walked towards the door. If you believe it to be true, then so be it. Guillaume slumped back in her chair, tears silently tracing paths down her cheeks. Just then, Noir, clad in his justice coat, walked into Guillaume's office without even knocking. Seeing Guillaume's tear-streaked face, Noir's brow furrowed. He approached her and whispered, "What's wrong, Guillaume? Did someone upset you?" Guillaume didn't answer. Her gentle gaze, shimmering with unshed tears, met Noir's. "Noir," she said, "let's get married." Noir stumbled back in shock. Had Guillaume finally come to her senses? Why so suddenly? "This feels like a trap." Guillaume took a step forward, burying her face in Noir's chest, her voice muffled. "This way, you'll never leave me." Noir scratched his head, confused. "I was never going to leave, why?" Guillaume chuckled softly, her voice barely audible. "Even in an illusion, could I bring myself to kill you?" While the Noir within the illusion was enjoying the romantic moment with Guillaume, the real Noir was having a much less pleasant experience. Noir and Puff sat on small stools, enduring the chilly wind of the Yomi Yomi no Mi's world, staring at Guillaume's unconscious form on the ground. A sense of despair washed over them. Guillaume was a candidate for admiral. Why hadn't she emerged from the illusion yet? Puff looked at Noir hesitantly. "Captain, do you think she'll ever wake up?" Noir hesitated, uncertainty creeping into his voice. I hope so." Guillaume lay on a blanket, covered with a quilt, like a sleeping beauty. Suddenly, her long eyelashes fluttered, and her eyes slowly opened. Noir and Puff immediately perked up. Guillaume sat up, staring at Noir in silence. Just as Noir was starting to feel uneasy under her gaze, Guillaume suddenly smiled. "You've shrunk again." "Huh? Why do I feel like my manhood is being questioned?" Guillaume cupped her ample breasts, a satisfied smile gracing her lips. "Good. My body is back to normal as well." Noir, completely bewildered, stated the obvious, "You're out of the illusion?" Guillaume stood up, smoothing out the wrinkles on her uniform. "Of course. I didn't know you had this kind of ability." Noir scratched his head sheepishly. "It's my first time using it, too." "Then it's best not to use it again." Guillaume glanced back at Noir, and he suddenly felt a shiver down his spine. That look, it was the same look Robin gave him when he'd annoyed her. "Speaking of which, why did it take you so long to break free from the illusion?" Noir asked, puzzled. Guillaume fell silent, lost in thought. The memories of the illusion were fading, yet some remained vivid. Unknowingly, she had lived an entire lifetime with Noir within that dream world. Guillaume, looking at the tightly bound Z and the others, asked Noir, "How long was I asleep?" Noir thought for a moment. "About 6 or 7 hours. I pretty tired myself, to be honest." Puff nodded. The captain's new ability was like hypnosis. It was impossible to wake anyone up from it. Guillaume sighed, a strange undertone in her voice. "Only that long." Noir yawned, puzzled. "Why, aren't you afraid of me?" Guillaume scoffed, her voice filled with confidence. "You may be conceited, narcissistic, and reckless, but you wouldn't harm a female enemy." Noir was taken aback. How did I not know that about myself? He'd faced plenty of female opponents in his time, and it seemed. I really haven't killed any of them." With a stern expression, Noir summoned the cursed blade, Devil Blade, from the underworld. He pointed the tip at Guillaume's nose. "Well, then, you can be the first." Guillaume rolled her eyes and then abruptly lunged towards the blade. Noir's hand jerked in surprise, and Devil Blade's trajectory shifted, slicing off a few strands of Guillaume's long hair. Guillaume reached out a delicate hand and flicked the blade. Without missing a beat, she retorted. "I know everything about that little thing of yours. Don't try to scare me with your sword tricks." Noir shuddered, clutching his groin and hiding behind Puff. "What's going on?" Puff's expression was a mix of surprise and concern. Then, with a dramatic flourish, he cried, "Captain, you'll break Robin's heart." Noir's face flushed. "Nonsense, there's nothing going on between us." But Puff, usually so reliable, continued his theatrical lament, as if suddenly enlightened. "I left for half an hour last night to make coffee for the captain, and that's when you..." Noir exploded. "What the hell are you talking about? Do you think I have time to even draw my gun in half an hour?" Guillaume nodded in agreement. "He's quite energetic, though." Noir almost dropped to his knees and begged, "Lady, when did we become so close?" Guillaume pushed Noir's head away, laughing, "Don't worry about it." Though she spoke lightly, a hint of sadness lingered in Guillaume's eyes. She had known all along that it was an illusion, but she had been reluctant to wake up, clinging to the dream of a man who loved only her. Now, Noir stood before her, but they were enemies. The chance for love between them was likely gone. This kind of cheesy plot would get ripped apart by readers if it were in a novel. A love meant to last forever wasn't something one could easily discard, even if it was just a dream. That was why Guillaume's gaze seemed so peculiar to Noir, making him want to run for the hills. Puff looked at Noir like he was looking at a SBAG who'd abandoned his responsibilities after having his fun. Guillaume stretched languidly, flaunting her impressive figure in front of Noir without a hint of shyness. "So, what are you going to do? Keep me locked up here?" Noir put on a fierce expression. "Of course, I'm going to ransom you and the others to the Marines." Guillaume shrugged, unfazed. Showing no fear, she walked over to Z and sat down next to the captive Marines. Noir stared at her, a headache forming. Why does my bewitching eyes suddenly feel so useless? Guillaume's understanding of him was unnervingly deep. She seemed to know his thoughts and desires almost better than his own mother, Belle-Mire. She's like a walking anti-Noir weapon. Noir, fuming, turned to leave with Puff. As he reached the door, Guillaume called out, "Remember to send some food. I want steak." Noir, who had just calmed down, nearly exploded again. "Why should I treat you like royalty?" "No way. You could rip out both my kidneys and I still wouldn't." "Hurry up, darling," Guillaume purred, sending him a seductive smile. Noir slammed the door shut, burying his face in his hands, and groaned to Puff, "Prepare her meal." Puff nodded seriously. Given the current situation, they couldn't afford to neglect her dietary needs. If, by some miracle, they achieved a perfect 10, they needed to be prepared to welcome their captain. "I need to look up recipes for pregnant women." Noir, watching Puff hurry away, was too tired to explain. He addressed the system in his mind. "This bewitching eyes is too powerful. Isn't this ability kind of messing with people's emotions?" The system's calm, mechanical voice responded. "The host within the bewitching eyes illusion is the real you. There's no difference. The illusion only changes the host's background and allegiance, allowing Guillaume to interact with you without any burdens or reservations. Therefore, if Guillaume develops feelings for you within the illusion, those feelings are for the true you, regardless of your allegiance. If, upon returning to reality, she overcomes the differences in your allegiances and still harbors genuine feelings for you, then the illusion played no part in her affection." Noir nodded thoughtfully. He hadn't expected to receive a lesson on love from the system. "System. Bro, do you have a cyber girlfriend?" Noir asked with a mischievous grin. The system fell silent. Noir waited, but no response came, leaving an awkward silence. Noir shrugged. "Fine, be that way, you single system forever." The night passed with its usual hustle and bustle. The underworld pirates soon awoke. Noir took the opportunity to introduce the newest member, the recently recruited Admiral Fujitora. Seeing Noir's respect for the Admiral, the older crew members felt a twinge of jealousy. Enel, self-proclaimed god and lightning enthusiast, was the first to express his displeasure. He glared at Fujitora with undisguised annoyance. "He just summons harmless meteors, and he's a blind swordsman. Why does he get treated better than me?" Noticing Enel's glare, Noir grinned mischievously. "If you're not convinced, why don't you have a little spar with Fujitora?" Enel, easily provoked, immediately accepted the challenge. The two stepped out onto the spacious deck of Thriller Bark. The rest of the crew, eager for entertainment, followed suit. Only Robin, who stayed by Noir's side, frowned, her sensitive nose twitching. She looked at him pointedly. "Who did you sleep with last night?" Noir froze. How was he supposed to explain this? If he'd told the truth, he'd stared at a beautiful woman all night, done nothing, and then she woke up calling him, darling. That sounded kind of creepy. Noir, sweating profusely, watched as Robin, still aboard Thriller Bark, sniffed the air suspiciously. She didn't smell anything, did she? Does that woman have a superhuman sense of smell? Making an excuse, Noir hurried off to watch the fight between Enel and Fujitora. Robin sighed but followed him calmly. As always, there was no need to worry about Noir, that oblivious blockhead, getting entangled in any romantic affairs. The fight outside ended quickly. Enel, with his rudimentary haki, was ultimately no match for Fujitora. Enel's combat strength was a mystery. His hand-to-hand combat was poor, his Busashoku haki was weak, and his observation haki, boosted by his devil fruit, was only advantageous in its range. His only real strength was the Guro no Mi. Even so, he'd given Fujitora a run for his money. After all, lightning was one of nature's most formidable forces. Enel threw his golden staff to the ground in frustration. Since arriving in the Blue Sea, his victories had been few and far between. Were all the people in the Blue Sea powerful? Noir didn't bother explaining. There was no shame in losing. Enel didn't seem to realize the caliber of opponents he'd been facing. Enel's devil fruit training had reached a limit. Noir would have to oversee his physical conditioning and haki training. Meanwhile, Ace, after days of unconsciousness, finally awoke. Led by the Spade Pirates, Noir arrived at the room where Ace was recuperating. Wrapped in blood-stained bandages, Ace, oblivious to his near-death experience, greeted Noir with a cheerful grin and a hearty clap on the shoulder. "Looks like we both survived, Noir." Noir brushed Ace's hand off his shoulder. "Your recovery is monstrous." Ace's clash with Akainu had been a mismatch, but Ace had managed to inflict significant damage with a near-suicidal attack. Akainu had probably recovered long ago, while Ace had nearly kicked the bucket. To survive that, the blood of the Pirate King is something else. Ace chuckled. Really? I thought everyone was like this. Do you recover slowly from injuries, Noir? Noir lifted his chin proudly. I rarely get injured. Okay, fine, you win. Noir sat beside Ace's bed. What are your plans? You're in no condition to sail right now. Deuce nodded in agreement. Yeah, Captain, maybe we should stay put for a while until you're fully recovered. Ace spread his hands helplessly. We offended a Marine Admiral. Where can we possibly stay? Noir stroked his chin thoughtfully. We'll drop you off at Fishman Island. I have Puff and many other fishmen and merfolk on board. The king of Fishman Island won't give us any trouble. You can recover there. Ace's face fell. I wanted to adventure with you in the new world. Noir rolled his eyes. Stop whining. You know I won't join the Spade Pirates. Ace chuckled sheepishly, dropping the subject. If he could, Noir would gladly recruit Ace, but his identity was too sensitive. He was the only son of the Pirate King, the descendant of the man the Marines and the world government feared most. With that lineage, once Ace gained enough strength, a single call to arms would rally countless ambitious individuals to his cause. That was a huge threat, one that even Noir's warlord title couldn't conceal. It would endanger both Ace and himself. Sending Ace to Whitebeard was the best option. Whitebeard had the power to protect him. After all, Noir was Ace's friend, not his father. He couldn't meddle too much. But just like in the recent battle, Ace had nearly sacrificed himself to help Noir. Noir wouldn't hesitate to return the favor if Ace ever needed him. Ace, still weak from his injuries, groaned. It's so boring not being able to go on adventures. Noir chuckled, about to reply, when the sound of snoring filled the room. That was fast. Noir shook his head and left the room, instructing the Spade Pirates, take good care of him. After checking on Ace, Noir went outside and opened a portal to the outside world using the underworld traveling ability. While the underworld was safe, it was also incredibly depressing. Many of the people Noir had rescued were nearing their breaking point, though they tried to hide it from him. Noir knew this, which made him even more eager to find a suitable island for a base. Releasing everyone from the shadowy world, Noir prepared to bid farewell to Hancock. The Empress had only come for a brief visit and wouldn't be staying long. Standing on the deck of the magnificent Kuja ship, the perfume Yuta, Hancock looked at Noir, a hint of reluctance in her eyes. Farewell, Noir-sama. Hearing the honorific, Sama, from Hancock always gave Noir goosebumps. Waving a small handkerchief like a father sending his daughter off to school, Noir called out, bye-bye, Boa, be safe on your journey. Hancock's sisters, Sandersonia and Marigold, exchanged glances. Is Noir-sama talking to us? They wondered aloud. Then, they heard Noir shout again, and Boa's sisters, too. The sisters perked up, eager to hear what Noir had to say to them. Sanda. Or was it Mari? You guys be careful too. The sisters slumped against the wall, dejected. They had gotten their hopes up. Noir hadn't even bothered to remember their names. As Hancock's ship sailed away, Noir sighed. Robin, seeing his melancholic expression, chuckled. Feeling sad to see her go? Noir nodded honestly. It's like when guests leave your home. It always feels a little empty afterward. First, Mahawk had left without saying goodbye, then his new friend, Hancock, and soon he'd have to part ways with Ace. Noir felt the gentle sea breeze on his face, a wistful smile playing on his lips. That's how it is on the sea. New friends come and go, old friends depart and reunite. This was the bittersweet joy of a seafaring journey. But amidst the constant farewells, there were always some companions who stayed, sailing alongside him, sharing the adventure. These companions, not too many, perhaps just enough to form a crew. As Noir stood by the sea, lost in contemplation, almost composing a poem in his head, the informant he'd left behind in Sabaody approached and whispered in his ear. Captain, we found that old man you asked us to look for. Noir's eyes lit up. They found really? Sabaody Archipelago was a haven for hidden talents. Many powerful figures from the first half of the Grand Line passed through, and the island's blend of natural beauty and lawlessness made it an ideal place to lie low. Led by one of his crewmates, Noir arrived at an opulent building. The crewmate's face was grim. He's in there. It seems he was captured. Puff looked up, his fishman features darkening. Isn't this the slave auction house? Noir crossed his arms, a sneer playing on his lips. On my island? Someone did this? Since Noir's arrival on Sabaody, though he hadn't explicitly forbidden it, the slave auction houses had wisely closed their doors. The patrons of these establishments were typically celestial dragons, and the auction houses knew what Noir had done to them. No one crossed the underworld pirates on this island. Yet, here they were, someone brazenly conducting a slave auction. This was a raw nerve for every member of the underworld pirates. Puff lowered his head, his normally gentle face full with anger. He asked in a low voice, "Captain, what should we?" Noir's eyes narrowed. If they want to open their doors, it means they're prepared to pay the price. Let's not pretend to be saints. Break it down. Puff nodded eagerly, a vicious glint in his eyes. He turned and clapped his hands sharply. The underworld pirates sprang into action. Nilf, their resident demolition expert, stepped forward and slammed his fist into the grand entrance. The seemingly sturdy, red lacquered doors splintered under the force of his blow, shards of wood exploding inwards. The shockwave rippled through the auction house's main hall. Inside, a brightly lit stage held a large iron cage containing children of various ages and races, both human and fishman. On the other side of the stage, the auctioneer, who moments before had been enthusiastically describing the merchandise, now lay paralyzed on the floor, pointing a trembling finger at the entrance and stammering. Devil Noir, amidst the overturned furniture and panicked guests, wealthy men and women scrambled in terror, their faces paling at the mention of Noir's name. They were all nobles who enjoyed owning slaves, but since arriving in Sabaody, they hadn't been able to purchase any due to Noir's presence. Frustrated, they'd offered a hefty sum, and finally, one auction house had reopened. They'd rushed to the event, eager to acquire new slaves. But luck was not on their side today. They hadn't even warmed their seats before the notorious pirate showed up. The group of thugs barged in without a word. Noir, draped in a menacing black fur coat, surveyed the scene with a chilling gaze. His crew, each one radiating a dangerous aura, stood beside him, weapons in hand, including the young women among them, all ready for a fight. Noir gestured with his hand. "Guard the entrance. Release the slaves." The first command was for his crew, the second for the auction house staff. The staff hastily unlocked the cage on stage. The children, as if seeing the light for the first time, scrambled out. Children of various races fearlessly ran towards the underworld pirates, crowding behind Noir, tearfully recounting their ordeals. They'd heard stories from older slaves about the pirate Noir, the liberator. In the eyes of many slaves, Noir had become a symbol of hope, much like Fisher Tiger before him. Noir gently patted the children's backs and fixed a cold stare on the auctioneer. "Is that all?" The auctioneer, intimidated by the fierce glare, stumbled backward. Just then, a man in a suit approached. He offered Noir a business card with a fawning smile. "Mr. Noir, I'm the owner of this establishment. Could we speak privately?" Noir didn't even glance at the card, offering no courtesy, no. The owner, sweat dripping from his bald head, forced a smile. "Sir, please, tell me what you want. Don't make things difficult for us." Noir chuckled darkly. "So you're offering me a bribe to continue your slave trade?" The owner eagerly nodded, leaning closer conspiratorially. "Though you are powerful, sir, our backers are among the highest-ranking celestial dragons, the nobles among nobles, so—" "Hey!" Noir chuckled softly and patted the owner's shoulder. The owner's heart leapt with hope, thinking he'd struck a deal. But then Noir spoke, his voice chillingly casual. "Remove his head." "Understood." The owner's eyes widened in terror, but before he could utter a word, a pair of cold hands gripped his skull. Lucci appeared silently behind him. With a swift, brutal motion, he snapped the owner's neck, sending a spray of blood across the room. He had quite literally removed the man's head. Lucci tossed the bloodied head to the floor. The pampered nobles, witnessing such brutality, froze in terror, their legs trembling. Some, overcome with fear, soiled themselves, leaving a pungent odor in the air. Lucci's pale hands were now stained crimson, blood dripping from his cuffs. What about these unsightly nobles? Noir, walking towards the auction house's inner chambers where the slaves were held, replied casually, "Do as you see fit." This was a high-class establishment that profited from the suffering of others. These nobles weren't good people. Leaving them in the hands of the ruthless Lucci was hardly a cause for concern. Lucci nodded. Once Noir had entered the slave pens, he turned to the rest of the underworld pirates and said coldly, "Kill them all." Those 3 words were like a thunderclap to the nobles. They cried out in terror. "No, you can't. We're nobles from all over the world. You wouldn't kill us." "You can't do this." The underworld pirates remained unmoved. The sounds of slaughter echoed from outside, but Noir didn't flinch. He continued walking towards the dark rooms within. A flash of light erupted from his fingertip, illuminating the large chamber. The room was filled with iron cages, each holding captured slaves. Noir immediately ordered his crew to free them. Just then, a powerful voice boomed through the darkness. "You've got quite the ruthless streak, young man." Noir smiled and approached one of the cages. Inside sat an elderly man with silver hair. "Dark King Rayleigh, I found you." He wore round, rimless glasses. Even in chains, his regal aura was undeniable. Rayleigh scratched his head, chuckling. "So you came looking for me, eh? Shame, I was hoping to earn some drinking money here." Noir burst out laughing. "Selling himself because he's broke? Now that's creative. I might have to try that if I ever go bankrupt." Rayleigh effortlessly removed the shackles from his neck, twisted the bars of the cage with his bare hands, and stepped out. Looking at the young man before him, Rayleigh grinned. "I know you, Devil Noir." Noir chuckled. "Looks like I've made a name for myself." Rayleigh brushed off some dust. "Indeed. Kidnapping celestial dragons for ransom. Only you could come up with something like that." Noir smiled faintly and opened Rayleigh's talent panel. Name: Silver's Rayleigh, Dark King, Gold Quality. The growth rate of all 3 hockey types changes depending on the user's age. At age 17, all hockey types are guaranteed to awaken and can be controlled freely. For each year older, hockey quality and quantity increase by 30%. This effect disappears after age 40, but after age 70, it declines at double the rate, dropping to the minimum standard. Right hand of the Pirate King, Gold Quality. As the trusted right-hand man of Gold D. Roger, he receives the protection of fate. Wherever he goes, circumstances align in his favor. His luck is unparalleled. While Roger lived, he enjoyed a life of peace and prosperity. After Roger's death, he is destined to meet the next chosen one. Master Mentor, Purple Quality. Rayleigh possesses exceptional judgment and teaching skills. Any apprentice he takes under his wing receives a boost in aptitude and the protection of fate. The time it takes for his apprentices to learn new skills is significantly reduced. He forms strong bonds with his apprentices, and they will never betray him. It was common for powerful figures in the One Piece world to possess at least 1 gold talent. It was no surprise that Rayleigh had 2. 2 talents, in particular, caught Noir's attention. Right hand of the Pirate King seemed to grant a kind of universal blessing of fortune, as if Rayleigh was destined to protect the chosen one. The hockey boost from Dark King was beyond Noir's expectations. With this talent, one could passively grow stronger simply by aging. However, the decline after age 70 was a problem. Noir was planning on achieving immortality. His original plan had been to combine Shanks' Haoshoku infusion talent with Rayleigh's Dark King to synthesize a mutated Dark Gold talent. But this age restriction made him hesitate. If Rayleigh wasn't suitable, other Haoshoku users he could consider were. Lost in thought, Noir didn't notice Rayleigh staring at him, a flicker of recognition in his eyes. Rayleigh rubbed his wrist and smiled. "Noir, your age and potential remind me of someone I used to know." Noir, still preoccupied, replied absent-mindedly, "Someone Rayleigh knew must have been quite remarkable." Rayleigh's gaze turned distant, a nostalgic expression on his face. Indeed, he was very strong. "I wonder if you've heard of him. His name was Douglas Bullet." The name snapped Noir out of his reverie. Douglas Bullet? Douglas Bullet, a former member of the Roger Pirates, known as the Devil Heir. If Rayleigh hadn't mentioned him, Noir would have almost forgotten this powerhouse from the Stampede movie. Bullet had lived during Roger's era. In his youth, he was already capable of fighting on par with Rayleigh in his prime. Noir even suspected Bullet could have escaped impelled down without Luffy's intervention. Later, at the Pirates Festival, the Marines, CP0, the 7 Warlords, the Revolutionary Army, and the Worst Generation Supernovas. All these renowned powerhouses had gathered to confront a single man, Douglas Bullet. Bullet's strength and talents were undeniable, especially his mastery of hockey, particularly Haoshoku and Busashoku. One could shake an entire island, the other could encase it, utterly absurd. Though, even he couldn't overcome the power of plot armor. Battles weren't just about numbers and stats. If that were the case, everyone might as well just surrender without fighting. Even the strongest could be defeated through sheer numbers or strategic teamwork. Even an admiral had to be cautious against a little girl. What if that little girl was Sugar? In any case, Douglas Bullet, the man who forced almost every major power, except the Yonko, to unite against him, was Noir's ideal target. Noir's eyes lit up. He grabbed Rayleigh's hand and shook it excitedly. As expected of the Dark King, what an excellent suggestion. Rayleigh stared at Noir, bewildered, unsure of what to say. Did I suggest something? I don't think I did. Rayleigh straightened his attire. So, what did you want to see me for? Originally, I wanted to check out your talents and copy them after my system upgrades, but now. Noir grinned and shook his head. Actually, it's nothing now. Rayleigh chuckled, shaking his head. What a strange kid. Just then, the system notification chimed. Host has encountered a significant figure. Reward issued. Universal Talent Copy Card X1, Master Shipwright Skill. Noir nearly choked. Do you know how long I've been waiting for Rayleigh's reward? He'd assumed it would be something related to hockey, but this damn system's rewards have nothing to do with a person's strength. Master Shipwright? What good is that to me? Am I supposed to start a shipbuilding business to support myself? After his usual internal complaints about the system, Noir and his crew freed all the slaves in the mansion, following their established routine of either recruiting them or sending them home. Though tedious, Noir had found that freed slaves made excellent crewmates. Their loyalty was unquestionable. Having endured hellish conditions, they wouldn't hesitate to protect their savior, as the underworld pirates had demonstrated countless times. And those chosen for slavery, though it sounded harsh, often possessed unique skills or talents. After settling the freed slaves, Noir decided to chat with Rayleigh, hoping to glean some insights into hockey training. Unlike Luffy, Noir already had his own established hockey style and system, so formally apprenticing himself to Rayleigh wasn't necessary. However, Rayleigh was a legend of the previous era. Even Noir benefited greatly from their conversation. Taking advantage of Rayleigh's good mood, Noir finally revealed his true purpose. He wanted Rayleigh to teach Enel and the others about hockey before they set sail again. Though Noir's own hockey was powerful, he didn't know how to teach others. He trusted Rayleigh to do a much better job. Rayleigh took a long swig of his drink. "So, how much are you ready to pay for my services?" Noir sat across from Rayleigh, Enel sitting attentively behind him, like a child about to be sent off to school by his parents. Except, in this case, it was more like pulling strings to get into the principal's good graces. Noir, prepared for this, smiled mysteriously and clapped his hands. Several loud thuds echoed from outside. Rayleigh raised an eyebrow and saw several large wooden chests neatly arranged outside, filled with various fine wines and valuable treasures. Noir had done his research. Rayleigh loved gambling and drinking, but he was perpetually short on funds. These treasures would be more than enough. Rayleigh chuckled. "You've certainly done your research." "Oh well, considering all this treasure, I suppose I can lend a hand." Noir smiled. While having Rayleigh take on Enel as a formal apprentice was different from simply having him help with training, Enel wasn't Luffy. There was no need to be greedy. To Rayleigh, Noir was likely just an intriguing newcomer, someone he found interesting enough for a bit of conversation and camaraderie. With the hockey training settled, Rayleigh looked at the pendant hanging around Noir's neck, a thoughtful expression on his face. "I never would have guessed that the infamous Devil Noir was royalty from the kingdom of Noidum." Noir froze, then quickly asked, "You know about Noidum?" Rayleigh shook his head. "I've only heard bits and pieces. My former captain mentioned it a few times." His former captain, that would be Gold D. Roger, the Pirate King. What did he say?" Rayleigh rubbed his chin, trying to recall. "Just some observations from Roger. He said Noidum was a brave nation. He mentioned they possessed a poneglyph and had delved into the true history of the world." Noir nodded. He and Robin had discussed this many times. They believed that this was the reason the world government had destroyed Noidum. A strange smile spread across Rayleigh's face as he revealed something shocking. Not only that, but they were also conducting all sorts of bizarre experiments, all related to devil fruits. "I heard they were trying to create a special vessel. A vessel capable of containing the power of every devil fruit in the world, effectively turning that vessel into the ultimate devil fruit user." A cold sweat trickled down Noir's back. That experiment sounded like an attempt to create a god. In that light, Noidum's destruction seemed almost justified. Rayleigh, seeing Noir's stunned expression, continued, "Roger and I were the only ones who knew about this speculation. I reacted much the same way you are now." Noir suddenly remembered something and blurted out, "Did they succeed?" Rayleigh shook his head. "Certainly not. Noidum was destroyed, and all their research and data were confiscated. If they'd completed that vessel, both Noidum and the world government would have acted long ago." Noir breathed a sigh of relief, feeling a flicker of gratitude. Honestly, if such a being existed, even he would be terrified. But if that's the case, could my system be somehow connected to Noidum's research? Though there's a lot of advanced technology in the One Piece world, creating something like a system, that seems a bit far-fetched, doesn't it? Rayleigh grabbed a bottle of sake from outside and took a long swig. That research fell into the hands of the government. With Vegapunk's further development, they've achieved things like giving devil fruits to inanimate objects and other such applications. Noir nodded, understanding dawning. Noidum's vast research combined with Vegapunk's genius-level intellect. Such advancements weren't surprising. Piecing together the information he gathered, Noir realized this kingdom, founded by the D clan, was clearly not to be trifled with. "One more thing," Rayleigh added casually. "The survivors of Noidum seem to be looking for you." "Looking for me?" Noir was surprised. Mihawk had mentioned this before. Noir knew that a group of Noidum survivors existed, and he'd been searching for them. Rayleigh stroked his beard. "They caused quite a commotion in Sabaody, even attracting the attention of the Marines. I believe they were looking for you." A smile spread across Noir's face. It seemed the survivors had somehow learned of his identity. Were they seeking him out to pledge their allegiance and help him reclaim Noidum? If so, their loyalty was quite touching. Noir pressed Rayleigh for more information about Noidum, but even the seasoned pirate had nothing more to offer. Aside from the world government, Rayleigh was likely the most knowledgeable source Noir had access to. He would have to find Noidum himself to uncover more secrets. With that, Noir left Enel, Wiper, and Lucci under Rayleigh's tutelage, waiting patiently for the Arc Maxim's coding to be completed. The coding process didn't take long, but but Noir intentionally waited for almost a month, finally receiving the long-awaited system upgrade notification. System upgrade complete. New features unlocked. The familiar, cold, mechanical voice filled Noir with a sense of anticipation. What's new? Tell me. First, Devil Fruit talent cards are no longer acquired through interactions with story characters. The host will automatically receive 1 talent card per month. Second, befriending story characters grants talent evolution cards, which can be used to upgrade the host's talents below dark gold quality once. Third, the host no longer needs physical contact to copy talents. Talent cards can be used as long as the target is within the host's line of sight. A brief silence followed. Noir asked hesitantly, "That's it?" Another pause. The system responded calmly, "Yes, that is all." Well, that's not bad. The updates were quite useful, especially the removal of the physical touch requirement for talent copying. If it weren't for that limitation, Noir would have copied Kizaru's abilities long ago. He wouldn't have been kited for so long. Having a consistent source for talent cards was also a significant improvement. And instead of acquiring talents directly from story characters, he now received talent evolution cards. Being able to upgrade talent quality was incredibly beneficial for Noir's current situation. After all, to create a dark gold talent, he needed to fuse 2 gold talents. With evolution cards, he could directly enhance the quality, saving himself the trouble of tedious training. As Noir explored the system's new features, Puff respectfully entered the room. "Captain, are we ready to depart?" Noir stretched, a grin spreading across his face. "It's time. Let's head to Fishman Island." Puff nodded and left to inform the crew. Noir called Enel back as well. Rayleigh's teaching was truly effective. In just a few days, Enel had already grasped the fundamentals of hockey. As they prepared to leave, Enel, usually so conceited, seemed reluctant to part with Rayleigh. Noir couldn't help but marvel at Rayleigh's charisma and teaching ability. With the underworld pirate's flag raised high, the bubble-coated Arc Maxim slowly descended into the water. Noir stood on deck, shouting to Rayleigh, who was seeing them off. "Goodbye, Rayleigh, we'll spar again sometime." Rayleigh sat cross-legged on the shore, watching Noir and his crew sail away, a pensive expression on his face. Though their time together had been short, he had a feeling that Noir would make waves in the world. In the coming era, the era of pirates that Roger had anticipated, Devil Noir would undoubtedly leave his mark. "Whoa, so this is the underwater world of the Blue Sea," Enel exclaimed, gripping the railing of the bubble-coated Arc Maxim in excitement. Wiper shoved Enel aside, his eyes filled with wonder. "I never imagined the blue depths would be so beautiful." As Sky Islanders, Enel and Wiper had dived into the sea clouds before gaining their devil fruit powers, but the cloud sea was nothing like the vibrant world of the Blue Sea. Noir, holding a transponder snail, whistled cheerfully as he snapped photos of the underwater scenery. Fish swimming close by, coral reefs and a dazzling array of colors, this was an experience far beyond anything he'd known in his previous life. Being a world-conquering overlord isn't everything. Sometimes, a scenic trip is just as rewarding. Suddenly, a shadow loomed over the Arc Maxim. Everyone looked up. A massive sea king, a giant octopus with unnervingly human-like facial features and a disdainful expression, hovered above them. Its 8 tentacles, thick as pillars, reached towards the Arc Maxim, creating a flurry of bubbles in the deep sea. Enel rolled up his sleeves, his voice booming with conceit. "Hey, are you looking for a fight?" Before Noir could stop him, Enel conjured a powerful bolt of lightning, launching a massive thunder dragon towards the sea king. The bubble coating surrounding the ship rippled precariously. The raging lightning, before even reaching the octopus, exploded in the water. The bright flash illuminated the dark depths. The sea king, its body convulsing from the powerful electric shock, rolled its eyes back. A plume of black smoke billowed upwards, carrying the scent of grilled octopus. On board the Arc Maxim, Noir and the others stared in disbelief. Noir, his hair now a frizzy afro, rushed forward and punched Enel on the head, scolding him furiously. "Are you stupid? We'll all get electrocuted in the water." Enel, having taken a punch for no apparent reason, was about to retort when he saw everyone's blackened faces and afro hairstyles. He burst into laughter. Hearing Enel's laughter, Noir immediately tackled him to the ground, joined by Lucci and Wiper, who proceeded to deliver a sound thrashing. After a while, the three, feeling much better, looked down at the bruised and battered Enel, who stammered an apology. "So. Suddenly, Enel looked up sharply, his eyes fixed on a point in the deep sea. Noir frowned. "Someone's coming, and they're not using a ship." Fishmen, perhaps. As the Arc Maxim drifted closer, a group of diverse fishmen came into view. Noir narrowed his eyes. He noticed an interesting symbol on their bodies. A crimson sun. Almost every fishman bore the mark. It was the emblem of the Sun Pirates. The Sun Pirates, founded by Fisher Tiger, consisted mainly of former slaves liberated from Mary Joieuse. They covered their hoof marks with the sun symbol as a sign of their liberation. Fisher Tiger was dead. These fishmen must be Jinbei's subordinates. Jinbei is still a warlord. Why would he send his men to intercept us? Before Noir could ask, the fishmen parted, revealing a rather plump, blue figure. It was a whale shark fishman with wild, windswept eyebrows and sideburns and a thick, short beard on his chin. A lightning-shaped scar ran across his left eye, and two prominent fangs jutted from his lower jaw, giving his otherwise round face a slightly menacing appearance. Noir's eyes widened. This blue fellow was Jinbei? He's here personally? He wouldn't actually be looking for a fight, would he? Wiper, unable to contain himself any longer, shouted, "What do you want? Don't think we're afraid just because we're underwater?" Before he could finish, Jinbei and the other fishmen bowed deeply towards the Arc Maxim. Wiper's blustering words hung in the air. He blinked, slightly embarrassed. Jinbei, his round belly pressed against the ground, spoke in a deep, respectful voice. "Noir, we thank you for what you've done for our fishman brethren." Noir relaxed. He finally understood Jinbei's intentions. After escaping Mary Joie's, Noir had instructed Puff to contact King Neptune of Fishman Island to arrange for the return of the liberated fishman slaves. Neptune had entrusted Jinbei with the task of retrieving his people. Everything had been agreed upon, but then the underworld pirates became the target of relentless pursuit by the world government and the Marines, making it impossible for Jinbei to find them. Jinbei and Neptune had heard from Puff about Noir's actions, mirroring the heroic deed of Fisher Tiger years ago. This filled Jinbei with profound respect. Jinbei had believed himself to be carrying on Tiger's legacy, but Noir's appearance made him realize there were others out there, individuals even more daring and courageous. During the battle at Sabaody, Jinbei had wanted to assist Noir, but the fight had ended before he could arrive. So, the courteous Jinbei had waited at the entrance to Fishman Island for Noir and the others. It should have been Jinbei escorting the fishmen home, but Noir had ended up doing it instead, which is why Jinbei adopted such a humble attitude. Jinbei remained bowed, seemingly waiting for Noir to speak. Noir had been about to tease him a bit, but he couldn't bring himself to be rude to someone so respectful. Noir sighed and waved his hand dismissively. It was nothing, really, just a minor detour. Jinbei raised his head slightly. "Thank you." He then gestured towards the fishmen flanking him. "The other entrances to Fishman Island are dangerous. Please follow me." With Jinbei, their local guide, leading the way, Noir and his crew finally had a clear path. A large group of fishmen swam ahead of the Arc Maxim. After some time, the contours of Fishman Island came into view. A massive, semicircular bubble barrier enveloped the entire island, a fantastical paradise nestled on the seabed. As Noir knew, the bubble barrier consisted of two layers, with a layer of air trapped between them. If they had attempted to enter Fishman Island via an incorrect route, their bubble coating would have automatically peeled off and merged with the island's barrier. Some ships might even have plummeted from the air layer in between, crashing onto the island's surface and leaving no trace. Even if they successfully breached the barrier, the intruders and their vessel risked being swept away by the powerful currents within. However, Fishman Island's defenses ended there. If anyone tampered with the barrier itself, the island would be left utterly defenseless. As they drew closer to Fishman Island, Enel stared in awe at the magnificent sight, murmuring, "Fishman Island is even more dazzling than Sabaody. It's like an underwater paradise. If we were to occupy this place..." Enel's mind raced with possibilities. Wiper rolled his eyes. But how can there be sunlight 10,000 meters under the sea? Noir paused, realizing he couldn't recall the explanation. Did Fishman Island have an artificial sun? Conus pointed towards the sky within the bubble. There's even a sky and clouds. Jinbei, overhearing their conversation, offered an explanation. Although we are deep beneath the sea, a giant tree called the Sunlight Tree Eve grows near Fishman Island. It channels sunlight from the surface down to us, giving us day and night. We call this phenomenon the sun's blessing. Because of this, the closer a house is to the sunlight, the more desirable and expensive it is. Wiper nodded in understanding. The citizens of Fishman Island yearned for sunlight, just as the people of Skypia longed for soil. The more elusive something was, the more precious it became. Having Jinbei as their guide made the journey all the more enjoyable. Finally, they reached the gates of Fishman Island. Inside, the water level was much lower. The crew could finally leave their bubble, and they all jumped out. Noir led the way, with Jinbei at his side. His Majesty, King Neptune, has prepared a feast at the Ryugu Palace, so please bear with me for a little longer. Noir nodded in understanding. He needed to find a way to enter the palace to meet Shirahoshi anyway. And so, Jinbei led them into the Ryugu Palace. The opulent decorations dazzled Noir once again. When I rebuild Noitum, I'll definitely make the palace even more luxurious. Under the watchful eyes of the heavily armed fishman guards, Jinbei escorted them to the main hall. King Neptune had indeed prepared a lavish feast, a spread of Fishman Island delicacies. The staple foods of fishmen and merfolk were seafood, which sounded rather unsettling to surface dwellers, like a form of cannibalism. Fishmen enjoyed meat and fish, while merfolk preferred scallops. For their human guests, the feast included a variety of dishes to suit their tastes. Neptune descended from his throne, his massive form blocking out the sunlight as he greeted Noir with sincerity. "Thank you for returning our children, Mr. Noir." Noir waved his hand dismissively. "Don't mention it, it wasn't specifically for your benefit." Neptune relaxed visibly, his eyes filled with appreciation. He'd heard about Noir's deeds from his former steward, Puff, but he'd found them hard to believe. Could anyone truly anger the all-powerful world government just to liberate slaves? When Noir arrived at Fishman Island, Neptune had instinctively suspected ulterior motives. But now, seeing Noir in person, he sensed no greed, no desire for reward. Noir even seemed reluctant to engage with him. Noir glanced at the banquet table where Enel and the others had already started feasting. This old man, Neptune, can really talk. Just as Noir, growing impatient, was about to make a beeline for the food, Neptune finally stepped aside. Noir sat down at the table, grabbing the large crab with both hands, a contented sigh escaping his lips. "Thank you for the hospitality." Neptune stroked his beard and chuckled. "You're most welcome, Mr. Noir." He paused, then continued, regarding the fishmen and merfolk you rescued. Noir smacked his forehead. He'd almost forgotten. In the spacious hall, Noir held a crab leg in one hand and his underworld mirror in the other. Starlight shimmered within the palace. As the light faded, numerous figures materialized. Neptune stared in surprise. The light had revealed a large group of fishmen and merfolk. Then, he spotted a familiar face among them, Puff, his old steward. Puff smiled and approached Noir, addressing Neptune. "Your Majesty, it's been a while." Neptune's lips curved into a smile. "Your safe return is the best news I could have asked for." He then turned to Noir, his gratitude evident. "Thank you again for bringing my people back, Mr. Noir." Noir shook his head. "Just take good care of them. There's one more thing." He raised the underworld mirror. The spade pirates materialized, Ace lying on a makeshift bed, looking around in confusion. Noir gestured towards Ace. "He's a friend of mine. He's quite seriously injured. I was hoping he could recuperate here for a while." Neptune readily agreed, his voice booming as he patted his chest. "Of course, Fishman Island will take good care of him." Though Noir's friend was likely a pirate, and Fishman Island harbored a deep resentment towards humans, especially human pirates, Neptune couldn't refuse. He was a king, after all. Protecting a single pirate was a small matter. Ace, realizing he'd been sold to Neptune, rolled his eyes. But the sight of the feast before him quickly dispelled any lingering resentment. As Ace joined the fray at the table, Enel protectively guarded his food, then asked curiously, "Neptune, why are there always weapons flying over the palace?" Hearing Enel's question, Noir subtly gave him a thumbs up and discreetly leaned in to listen. Dragonnx was infatuated with Princess Shirahoshi. Consumed by possessive jealousy, he used his motto no mi powers to target her, causing weapons to constantly fly from afar and injure her. Noir hadn't been sure how to bring up Shirahoshi, but now that Enel had raised the question, he could inquire more naturally. Neptune sighed at Enel's question. "That's my daughter. She's been cursed, so weapons often fly at her, causing her harm." Ace, having recovered somewhat, joined the conversation, curious. "Your daughter? So, she's the princess? Why haven't you dealt with the culprit? Wouldn't that solve the problem?" Jinbei answered for Neptune. "The man's name is Dragonnx. He's a devil fruit user, and it's difficult to track him down." Isho, listening intently, offered his sympathy. "I imagine your daughter has suffered greatly." Neptune sighed heavily, his gaze downcast. "To protect Shirahoshi, I've confined her to Hard-Shelled Tower. It's been almost 7 years. Enel shuddered. 7 years in one place? That mermaid princess must have incredible patience. Noir, sensing the opportunity, spoke. "Could I meet Princess Shirahoshi?" Neptune hesitated, wanting to refuse. "But if we open the gates of Hard-Shelled Tower, I fear." Noir scoffed. "That devil fruit ability, unless he throws an entire island at us, it's useless against me." Jinbei nodded in agreement. "Indeed, your majesty. I've returned to the palace. I can assist Noir." With 2 warlord-level powerhouses offering their support, Neptune's worries eased. He made up his mind. "Very well, follow me." Noir, inwardly pleased, followed Neptune to the depths of the Ryugu Palace. They arrived before an incredibly well-hidden, enormous castle. Wiper gaped at the towering structure. Fit for a princess, indeed, this place is huge. Jinbei opened his mouth, then hesitated. This place might seem large, but it's actually just Princess Shirahoshi's bedroom. The gates of Hard-Shelled Tower were littered with swords, knives, and other sharp weapons. and in the distance, another volley of deadly projectiles hurtled towards them. Isho frowned slightly, about to use his abilities to stop the incoming weapons when Noir raised a hand to stop him. HMPH. A wave of crimson energy erupted from Noir, forming a barrier that repelled all the flying objects. Haoshoku Haki couldn't be actively trained, but it grew stronger with the user's willpower. Noir's Conqueror's Haki had become so potent that it could now affect physical objects. Jinbei, sensing the terrifying aura that had briefly emanated from Noir, looked at him with a mixture of awe and apprehension. What a powerful Haoshoku Haki, and he has such control over it. He really is the devil Noir, the one who escaped the clutches of the Marine's top forces. Seeing Noir deflect the attack without even moving, Neptune was reassured. He signaled to the mermaid guards flanking the gate to open it. The heavy gate swung open, and Neptune entered the room. Light slowly filled the vast, dimly lit space. The once opulent chamber had been transformed. Pink shells adorned the walls, and even the everyday objects were decorated in a charmingly girlish, pastel pink style. On the other side of the room, beneath the soft glow of luminous pearls, lay a massive bed occupied by an equally massive mermaid. The mermaid, awakened by the light, looked towards the entrance, her eyes widening in delight. Father. Whoa, even knowing that Shirahoshi was enormous, seeing her in person was still a shock. However, Noir had met wars, so Shirahoshi's size, combined with her gentle nature, didn't faze him. Enel's eye twitched as he looked at Neptune, who was also incredibly large. He muttered, like father, like daughter. Wiper nodded silently, however, she didn't look anything like her father. Shirahoshi's long, wavy pink hair flowed behind her, ethereal and soft. Her bright blue eyes and her pink tail, with its varying shades, added to her innocent beauty. Noir had seen many beautiful women during his travels, but in terms of sheer beauty, Shirahoshi's delicate features easily placed her in his top 3. Coupled with her ample bosom, she was truly a vision of unparalleled beauty. Noir felt a warmth rising in his face. Shirahoshi, with a flick of her magnificent tail, was about to swim to Neptune's side when she noticed the unfamiliar human standing next to her father. She stopped, her hands clasped nervously in front of her chest, her voice trembling slightly. Father, who are they? She's quite timid. Neptune gently patted Shirahoshi's head, guilt tugging at his heart. They rescued many fishmen and merfolk. They're friends, Shirahoshi. Shirahoshi nodded nervously, her eyes darting towards Noir and the others. When she saw them looking back at her, she quickly averted her gaze. Noir, wanting to ease the tension, smiled gently and extended a hand. My name is Noir. I'm the captain of the underworld pirates. Shirahoshi flinched slightly at Noir's outstretched hand and looked at her father for reassurance. Neptune gave her an encouraging nod, and Shirahoshi hesitantly extended her own hand, her delicate fingers brushing against Noir's. Noir breathed a sigh of relief. It had been a long time, even considering his previous life, since he'd encountered such a shy girl. Despite her size, Shirahoshi's gentle nature was endearing, especially to the women present. Konis and Khalifa quickly struck up a conversation with Shirahoshi. Though it was mostly Khalifa and Konis doing the talking, Shirahoshi listened attentively, her tense expression gradually softening into a smile. Neptune, seeing this, finally relaxed a little. But his worry soon returned. He sighed. I failed Shirahoshi. I haven't been able to catch the culprit who torments her, forcing her to live in such a dangerous world, without even any friends. Noir tried to reassure him. There's not much you can do. That devil fruit ability is truly troublesome. Neptune nodded glumly. Robin nudged Noir's side and whispered, aren't you going to help her? Noir looked at her in surprise. Why should I help her? You specifically asked to meet Shirahoshi. Don't tell me you just wanted to chat? Noir scratched his head, chuckling evasively. He'd come to meet Shirahoshi to copy her talent, of course. But he'd been a little distracted by her other assets. Helping Shirahoshi wasn't out of the question. With Enel and Fujitora around, finding dragonnx shouldn't be too difficult. But first, Noir needed to copy Shirahoshi's talents. He activated his system and discreetly examined her talent profile. World's greatest beauty, gentle, gold talent. Possesses one of the most beautiful faces in the world. Experiencing trauma will gradually make her personality more docile. Those close to her gain increased luck, charm, and training talent. Furthermore, anyone who gains a high affinity with her will never lose that positive regard. Poseidon's command, gold talent. One of the 3 ancient weapons capable of world destruction. Poseidon can command all the sea kings in the world. One of the most mysterious powers in this world. If the possessor of this talent is not a mermaid, the number of sea kings they can control will be significantly reduced. Empathic resonance. Red talent. Shirahoshi possesses innate observation haki, inherited from her mother, Odahime. The stronger her observation haki becomes, the higher the chance of reading the thoughts of others. If pushed beyond its limits through intense training, this talent might evolve into a gold talent, with a chance of forcibly altering the values and consciousness of others. Noir gasped. Though Shirahoshi's combat abilities were currently negligible, her potential talents were formidable. As the ancient weapon Poseidon, with a single command, she could unleash Sea King attacks on every island in the world, plunging the four blues into chaos. And she also possessed innate observation haki, a power even rarer than Conqueror's haki. Otahime was also gifted with extraordinary observation haki, allowing her to empathize with others and even influence their thoughts. In some ways, this ability was even more frightening than Poseidon's command. If her observation haki could influence the entire world, the consequences would be unimaginable. While the others weren't paying attention, Noir stored the Mera Mera no Mi and the main no Mi in his talent library and discreetly used 2 copy cards. The red talent, empathic resonance, and the gold talent, Poseidon's command, surged through him. Noir felt a sense of clarity wash over him. It was like a nearsighted person finally putting on glasses. Observation haki had always felt like looking through a blurry lens. But now, with Shirahoshi's talent, his perception was crystal clear. He could even faintly sense the emotions of those around him. So pitiful. A faint voice echoed in his mind. Noir's observation haki, acting on its own, expanded briefly before quickly retracting. He clutched his forehead, a pained expression on his face. The new properties of his observation haki were overwhelming. Was that Robin's voice? Noir looked at Robin, but her expression was unreadable. It didn't seem like what she was thinking. This is real telepathy. Noir knew Robin well. Sometimes, even when she appeared calm on the surface, her heart was more compassionate than anyone else's. Oh well, I've copied all of Shirahoshi's talents. I'll help her out, for Robin's sake. Noir turned to Enel. Can you pinpoint where those weapons are coming from? Though Noir's observation haki was now far superior to Enel's in quality and unique properties, few in the entire world could match Enel's range. Enel raised his hands to his temples, striking an odd pose. Almost lost it, but I've got a general location. Jinbei looked at Enel with surprise. Your haki can reach that far? This long-eared guy doesn't look like much, and his personality is a bit off-putting, but his haki is incredibly advanced. Jinbei stared at Enel with newfound respect, his intense gaze making Enel uncomfortable. Noir, faintly aware of Jinbei's thoughts, suppressed a chuckle and urged Enel to find dragonnx quickly. Using this advanced form of observation haki was incredibly draining, both mentally and physically, far more so than his previous level of haki. It truly is the highest level of observation haki. If I didn't have a strong will, I might be overwhelmed by it. As for controlling Sea Kings, he'd keep that ability hidden for now, a trump card to be used when necessary. Although he wasn't a mermaid princess, and his control over Sea Kings was limited, he could still easily destroy an island if he exerted his full power. He couldn't let the Marines know about this ability, even if they didn't connect it to the ancient weapon Poseidon. With Noir's assurance, Neptune chose to trust Enel's observation haki. He summoned a large group of fishman guards, and they marched out of the Ryugu Palace. This time, even Princess Shirahoshi joined them. She had insisted on coming along. Though Neptune was worried, Noir didn't object. Not only were the main members of the underworld pirates present, but they also had Jinbei, the Knight of the Sea. Surely they could handle one obsessed dragonnx? Besides, bringing Shirahoshi along might increase his affinity with her and unlock a system reward. Neptune didn't accompany them. Instead, he sent his 3 sons to protect Shirahoshi. Fukaboshi, the eldest prince, looked at Shirahoshi with concern. Shirahoshi, why don't you stay in the palace? We'll handle this. Ryuboshi, the second prince, added, yes, dragonnx is targeting you. It's dangerous. Shirahoshi, usually meek and obedient, shook her head firmly. I'm sorry, brothers, but I want to go out. If Noir can make dragonnx stop targeting me, I can finally visit Mother's grave. The 3 brothers fell silent. Shirahoshi had been closest to Queen Otahime, but after their mother's death, Shirahoshi had become the target of dragonnx's Mato no Mi powers. Because of this, Shirahoshi hadn't even been able to attend her own mother's funeral. Noir's eyes narrowed, a dark red aura erupting from him as he shattered the incoming projectile. This is getting annoying. dragonnx was throwing weapons every 5 minutes. His twisted courtship was truly repulsive. Enel pointed towards a massive shipwreck. He's in there. Noir, his patience wearing thin, gave dragonnx's hideout a chilling smile. Without a word, he launched his attack. Yasukani no Magatama. Mimicking Kizaru's technique, Noir gathered golden light in his hands, unleashing a barrage of laser beams that rained down on the ship. The already dim underwater world was plunged into further darkness as the beams stirred up a storm of sediment. Damn it! Who attacked me? A furious roar echoed from the ship. A fishman, also coated in waterproof bubbles, emerged. his face covered in grime, glaring at the intruders. But when he saw the legendary fish man, Jinbei, the Knight of the Sea, leading such a large group, he almost turned tail and fled. What the hell is going on? Dragonnx, while a somewhat troublesome opponent for Fishman Island's guards, was no match for Jinbei, a warlord of the sea. Especially with the infamous Devil Noir at Jinbei's side, escape was practically impossible. Dragonnx glanced around and spotted the beautiful figure that haunted his dreams. He cried out excitedly. Princess Shirahoshi. Shirahoshi trembled at the sound of his voice and quickly hid behind Noir. Noir summoned his cursed blade, Devil Blade, his expression impassive. Let's finish this quickly. I don't have time to waste. Dragonnx, seeing the woman he loved hiding behind another man, momentarily forgot his fear. Rage consumed him as he roared. You damn bastard. Don't interfere with my love for Princess Shirahoshi. Noir's face darkened, and his figure vanished into the murky depths. Dragonnx's pupils constricted. The coppery tang of blood filled the water, staining the sea crimson. Jinbei watched in stunned silence. He hadn't even seen how Noir had moved, how he'd drawn and swung his sword. Was it a combination of light and shadow manipulation? But how could Noir use his powers underwater? Dragonnx clutched his gushing throat, his face contorted in agony as he glared at Noir. Noir wiped his blade on Dragonnx's clothes, a cold smile playing on his lips, weak. Dragonnx's vision blurred, his eyes rolling back as he floated lifelessly in the water. Shirahoshi covered her eyes, unable to bear the sight. The three princes stared at Noir in awe as he sheathed his sword. The Ryugu kingdom had been unable to capture Dragonnx for so long, not only because of his cunning and elusiveness, but also because of his considerable strength. Yet, against Devil Noir, he hadn't even landed a single blow. Noir swam back to the mermaid patrol, addressing Shirahoshi. He's taken care of. You don't have to worry about him bothering you anymore. Though Shirahoshi found Noir's methods a bit brutal, she was deeply grateful. Thank you, Noir-sama. As she spoke, the system reward arrived. Significant figure encountered. Reward issued, Talent Evolution Card X1, Pearl Necklace X1. Noir, thrilled to receive his first Talent Evolution card, examined it within his mental inventory. Without hesitation, he used the card on his Empathic Resonance talent. All his other talents could be upgraded through training, but Observation Haki, especially at its highest level, was incredibly difficult to improve. His recently acquired red talent, Empathic Resonance, quickly evolved to gold quality. Noir felt a rush of power, his mind momentarily overwhelmed by the surge of energy. Robin, noticing Noir's disorientation, quickly supported him, her voice soft and concerned. Are you alright? You don't look well. Noir's mind felt like a muddled mess. He shook his head, trying to clear it. I'm fine. Just adjusting to the new power. Observation Haki was different from other abilities. This power to peer into the minds of others was extraordinary, and its usage placed a significant strain on the user's mental fortitude. Furthermore, Empathic Resonance was the talent Noir had possessed for the shortest time, so his control over it was currently less enhanced than his other abilities. It wasn't a major issue, though. With practice, he would master it. Noir then examined the pearl necklace, studying the system's description. It appeared to be an ordinary piece of jewelry, but its function was more useful than he'd anticipated. It allowed the wearer to breathe underwater and protected them from the harmful effects of seawater. Essentially, it acted like a water-repelling charm, something quite useful for devil fruit users. It wasn't much use to Noir, however, since he could already swim. Too bad it wasn't mass-producible. He would have given one to Robin and the others. With Dragonnx dealt with, the four princes breathed a collective sigh of relief. Shirahoshi expressed her desire to visit her mother's grave. The princes readily agreed, deciding to escort her there. Enel stretched, yawning. How boring. I was hoping for a stronger opponent. Noir shrugged. Things are winding down here. Let's have some fun and then head back to the surface. Robin nodded and raised her hand. I spoke with Neptune earlier. He mentioned that there's a poneglyph hidden within the palace. I'd like to take a look. Noir nodded. Fishman Island was rich in historical information, including poneglyphs, Joy Boy's message, and Noah. However, Noir had observed that the sunken ship Dragonnx had been inhabiting wasn't the Noah from the future. Noir couldn't repair a ship of that size anyway, so he hadn't given it much thought, though he was curious about the history surrounding it. Since Robin was interested in these things, he decided to leave the investigation to her. As the underworld pirates dispersed to enjoy their time on Fishman Island, Noir was about to explore the area when Fukaboshi approached him, his face troubled. Noir raised an eyebrow. What's wrong? Shouldn't you be with your sister? Fukaboshi's expression was grim. A group of intruders has illegally entered Fishman Island. They're causing havoc. Noir's eyes narrowed. Pirates? What does that have to do with me? Can't you handle them? Fukaboshi shook his head. but they specifically said they were looking for you." Noir was taken aback. Looking for him? He'd temporarily dealt with the world government and the Marines. They shouldn't be causing him any trouble. Did he have other enemies? He thought for a moment. Is it crocodile? Noir sighed and said to Fukaboshi, "Lead the way. I'll see what they want." Fukaboshi nodded, his fishtail swishing as he gestured for the merfolk guards to bring a royal carriage equipped with a bubble-encased compartment. Noir, pleased with the prince's efficiency, settled into the carriage. Fukaboshi, riding a bubble-powered seahorse, led the way. Soon, they arrived at a bustling street. Fukaboshi drew his weapon, confronting a group of individuals. Noir observed the intruders with interest. They wore matching, threadbare cloaks with hoods that obscured their faces. They certainly looked like dangerous criminals. Noir narrowed his eyes, focusing on the group of mysterious figures, especially the man at the forefront. Their appearances were blurry and indistinct, but the silhouette of the leader seemed familiar. Noir tapped his head lightly. Where have I seen him before? The mysterious figures, surrounded by Ryugu Palace guards, nervously raised their weapons. The leader focused a powerful aura gathering in his hands. Glossy black Busashoku haki coated his fists. Noir was taken aback. Such mastery of haki was rare. Fukaboshi's eyes flashed with anger. Did these pirates really think they could invade Fishman Island without consequences? Brandishing his trident, the hot-headed prince lunged, clashing with the mysterious man. However, Fukaboshi, despite his fierce appearance, held back. Within a few exchanges, a haki-infused punch landed squarely on his face, sending him flying backward. Noir stared at Fukaboshi, exasperated. If you're not strong enough, just stay put. Why charge in recklessly? As the man with haki prepared to attack again, Noir called out, "Stop." The man obeyed instantly, halting his advance and staring blankly at Noir, who was now descending from the carriage. Noir cleared his throat theatrically. "You are." Before he could finish his sentence, the man abruptly dropped to his knees, his head bowing low to the ground. This unexpected action stunned Noir. "What's this about? No need to kneel even if you don't want to fight." Before Noir could help the man up, his companions followed suit, collapsing to their knees one after another. Then, they began begging, their foreheads hitting the ground in unison, the sound echoing like a hailstorm. Noir felt his lifespan shortening with each thud. The nearby Fishman citizens who had fled the earlier attack heard the commotion and wondered, is that thunder? Fukaboshi, his nose bruised and bleeding, saw the kneeling figures and looked at Noir with awe. As expected of Devil Noir, he made them beg for mercy without even lifting a finger. Even Noir, with his thick skin, couldn't handle being bowed to by so many people. He said awkwardly, "Who are you? Get up and speak." As if on cue, the group sprang to their feet, their backs ramrod straight, their faces resolute as they stared ahead. Holy crap! They resembled highly trained soldiers, their movements precise and disciplined. Noir paused, then walked towards the leader, a suspicion forming in his mind. Have we met before? The man's eyes widened, his voice booming like thunder. Indeed, your highness has a keen eye. Your highness, Noir froze, then remembered what Rayleigh had told him. Are you remnants of Noitum? Noir asked, his eyes widening in surprise. The man's eyes glistened with unshed tears, his voice trembling as he replied, Yes, your highness, I apologize for my failure to recognize you back then. Noir smacked his forehead. It finally clicked. This was the burly man who had sold him the Ryu no Mi. At the time, he'd found it strange that someone in the first half of the Grand Line possessed such mastery of Busashoku haki and casually sold devil fruits. But if he was from Noitum in the New World, his actions made perfect sense. Noir stroked his chin, pointing at the man. What's your name? The man's expression turned serious. I was adopted by the former king and granted the name Kairos Riha. Noir scratched his head, then asked with a puzzled expression, So, Riha, how did you find me? Riha's square, resolute face remained impassive. I recognized your highness by your pendant. I then gathered my comrades and followed your trail. Using your bounty posters and news reports, we searched Thriller Bark and Sabah archipelago. Just as we were planning to sneak into Mary Joie's, we heard news of your arrival on Fishman Island. Noir's lips twitched. True to Noitum's style, it's a good thing they didn't infiltrate Mary Joie's. They probably wouldn't have made it out alive. This display of loyalty confirmed Noir's belief in their dedication. They had traveled to so many places, unwavering in their search for a prince whose identity they couldn't fully confirm. Their determination was impressive. But Noir still had questions. Why would a pendant convince you to follow me? He hadn't even been born when Noitum fell. It was likely his parents who had escaped. Riha lowered his head, his voice filled with sorrow. In those years, the royal family dwindled. The former king adopted many orphans like myself, granting us the name Kairos and raised us to serve Noitum. But then, disaster struck. The former king was killed. We protected the first prince and escorted him out of Noitum. Your pendant is the first prince's royal insignia." "The first prince? My father?" Noir asked, his voice tinged with emotion. "If the first prince escaped Noidam and sent me to the East Blue, where is he now?" Riha was momentarily stunned. "We don't know. He disappeared during our escape." However, the former king seemed confident that the first prince would reach safety. Noir shook his head sadly. To be adopted by the king and granted the name Kairos meant they were trusted confidants, raised from childhood. Even they didn't know the details. He had a growing feeling that something else must have happened after the first prince escaped Noidam, something that ensured Noir's safe upbringing. Riha looked at Noir's face, his voice filled with emotion. "Seeing you safe and sound, your highness, I'm deeply moved." Noir, looking at Riha's weathered face, knew the man had suffered greatly. He sighed. "You've all endured so much over the years." Riha shook his head vehemently, then hesitated before asking, "Your highness, what about our kingdom?" A confident smile spread across Noir's face. "Now that I've found you, I will rebuild Noidam." Riha and the other Noidam remnants erupted in cheers, bowing their heads in unison. Yes. With that settled, he had a base of operations and the unwavering loyalty of the Noidam remnants. Rebuilding his kingdom shouldn't be too difficult. Just as Noir's mood soared, Riha spoke, his voice laced with anger. "But your highness, our homeland has been claimed by the world government." Noir's expression turned cold. It seemed he'd have to make some demands of the government after all. He had to see Noidam's ruins with his own eyes. There were likely secrets about his past hidden there. After listening to Riha's report, Noir calmly considered how to reclaim Noidam. While it wasn't essential to return to their original homeland, finding another island to rebuild their nation would be just as practical. Noir felt he had to fight for what was rightfully theirs. Noir turned to Riha. "You're certain about Noidam's location, right?" Riha nodded firmly, retrieving a worn-out eternal pose from his satchel. He knelt on one knee and offered it with both hands. "I've kept Noidam's eternal pose safe, ensuring it remains undamaged." Noir accepted the eternal pose, examining the inscription on its surface. He looked at Riha reassuringly. "Don't worry, at least Noidam still has us." Those words, Riha saw the image of a tall, imposing figure standing confidently amidst a raging inferno, echoing words from years past. "Flee, as long as you survive, Noidam will never fall." Overwhelmed with emotion, tears welled up in Riha's eyes. He choked back a sob. "The first prince," he said something similar. Noir paused, then smiled gently. "It seems I have something in common with this father I never knew." Noir helped Riha to his feet, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Come on. The king of Fishman Island is a friend of mine. I'll find you a place to rest." Riha lowered his head respectfully, a hint of relief in his voice. "As expected of your highness. Even without the protection of Noidam, you've forged alliances with such powerful individuals." Noir chuckled. "If I were still Prince of Noidam, I doubt I would have made so many friends." Riha nodded in agreement. Indeed, on the vast sea, there are always unexpected encounters. Years of fleeing and wandering had taught Riha and the other Noidam citizens the dangers of the world. Noir asked Fukaboshi to arrange for more carriages, intending to find suitable accommodations for the Noidam remnants who had come to find him. As soon as Fukaboshi heard that these mysterious people were Noir's subordinates, he immediately dispatched his men to make the arrangements. As expected of the heir to the Fishman Island throne, Fukaboshi always ensured Noir, his guest, was comfortable. In no time, several carriages with seahorse-drawn chariots arrived. Fukaboshi himself accompanied Noir in the lead carriage, with Riha sitting beside them. At Noir's prompting, Riha formally apologized to Fukaboshi, who graciously accepted. After all, no one had been seriously injured, and Fukaboshi had no desire to escalate the situation, especially since Noir's subordinates had shown such respect. They were far better than those two-faced humans. They returned to Ryugu Palace. The crew was out exploring the island, and Shirahoshi, Enel, and the others were nowhere to be seen. But as they entered the palace, a familiar figure emerged from Noir's room. Robin was dressed in a loose white knit sweater and shorts, her sleek black hair tied back, round glasses perched on her nose. She carried a stack of papers as she walked towards Noir. This attire gave the usually mature Robin a touch of youthful charm. She adjusted her glasses and handed the papers to Noir. "I've transcribed the poneglyph. It's about Joy Boy." Noir smiled, gazing into Robin's beautiful blue eyes. "Any conclusions?" "I have a few ideas, but they're still vague," Robin replied, her brow furrowed in concentration. As she spoke, she untied her hair, letting her long, dark tresses cascade down her back. Noir reached out and gently stroked her hair. "No need to rush. We have plenty of time. Every mystery will eventually be solved." Robin didn't reply, simply leaning her head into his touch. Fukaboshi, witnessing this scene for the first time, awkwardly scratched his head and whispered to Riha, "Sir Noir and Miss Robin seem to be very close." Riha, slow to catch on, suddenly widened his eyes. Could it be? Greetings, princess consort. Riha dropped to his knees again, his voice booming through the hall. Noir's hand jerked, startled. He said in exasperation, "What are you yelling about?" Riha looked up, confused. "Isn't this beautiful lady your highness's wife?" Noir's face flushed crimson. "Robin is my first companion at sea, Robin stifled a giggle, patting Noir playfully. "Let it be. He can call me whatever he likes." Riha nodded enthusiastically. Noir looked at Robin with concern. "You don't mind that title?" Robin smiled without saying a word. Inwardly, however, she wanted to crack open Noir's thick skull and see what was going on inside. Robin calmed her turbulent emotions and addressed Riha. "You called him, Your Highness. Does that mean you're a citizen of Noidum?" Riha's eyes lit up. "Yes, how did you know?" Noir answered for her. "Robin is a historian from O'Hara. She's been helping me search for traces of Noidum." Riha's eyes widened in understanding. "O'Hara did have contact with our kingdom in the past, I see." Robin, understanding Noir's intentions, said, "So, you're planning to head to Noidum next?" Noir nodded, thinking aloud. "Before that, I need to secure the warlord title the government promised me." He turned to Riha. "Besides you, where are the other Noidum citizens?" Riha pulled out a nautical chart and pointed to a small island. "They're all here. The surviving citizens of Noidum built a hidden village on this island. We travel out to gather resources." Noir nodded, studying the chart. "Then we'll go there first and gather everyone." Riha had heard rumors of Noir's mysterious ability to transport large numbers of people effortlessly. Noir and Robin discussed their plans for a long time, confirming details with Riha and finalizing their next course of action. After leaving Fishman Island and entering the New World, they would first gather the Noidum remnants. Then, they would find a suitable island to meet with the government, exchange their hostages, and finally head to the ruins of Noidum. As for the hostages, Noir had initially considered using his bewitching eyes more frequently. But after trying them on Guillaume, he had decided to seal away that particular power. The ability was too potent. Noir still didn't know how much time had passed for Guillaume in the illusion, or what she had experienced. But one thing was certain. Guillaume now knew him better than his own mother. Every time he saw her, he felt completely exposed. Moreover, Noir felt that Robin's attitude towards him had changed since he'd used the bewitching eyes on Guillaume. She seemed more possessive, almost as if someone had stolen her precious treasure in a video game. Night on Fishman Island held a different magic than on land. Even with the sun gone, a gentle luminescence seemed to emanate from the surrounding waters. Or perhaps it was simply the radiant glow of the Ryugu Palace. As evening deepened, Enel, Wiper, and the others returned, each hauling a cart overflowing with Fishman Island treasures. They looked thoroughly pleased with their shopping spree. Khalifa and Konis, meanwhile, had transformed into elegant noblewomen, sporting their new finery. The women had indulged in beautiful clothing and shimmering shell souvenirs. The men's purchases, however, were a different story. Enel proudly brandished what looked like a gold spray-painted shell scepter. "Check it out, Noir, isn't it awesome?" He grinned, clearly expecting praise. Noir inwardly cringed. He picked up that word from me, but using it for that, he decided to let it slide. Enel's taste was, shall we say, unique. Hopefully, the others had fared better. Wiper excitedly held up a clunky metal contraption. "Behold, my robot." Lucci, a sinister smile playing on his lips, cradled a human skeleton. Even Fujitora, his usual calm demeanor replaced with a mischievous grin, held a set of oddly shaped dice. Noir sighed. "Right. None of the underworld pirates are exactly what you'd call normal." He gestured for them to put their things away, then called Riha over. "Everyone, this is Riha, a retainer from my homeland, the Kingdom of Noidum. He's officially part of the crew now." Confusion rippled through the group. Only Lucci, his eyes narrowed in thought, seemed to grasp the significance. "So, Captain, does this mean you're the heir to Noidum's throne?" Riha nodded, a shadow passing over his face. "Only the first prince's line survives. Prince Noir is likely the last of the royal family." Konis gasped, covering her mouth with her hand. "Captain, you're a prince?" Wiper scratched his head, trying to process the information. "So, if we're with the captain, does that make us, like, royal advisors or something?" Fujitora sighed. "A fallen kingdom, a prince forced to wander the sea, how tragic." The crew turned to Noir, their expressions a mixture of surprise and pity. Noir rolled his eyes, exasperated by their sudden sympathy. "I was adopted and had a fantastic life. Besides, I'm about to reclaim my kingdom." Enel's face lit up. "We're taking back our territory? I'm all for that." Wiper cracked his knuckles, grinning. "Getting the captain on that throne sounds like a pretty good gig." Their enthusiasm was infectious. Noir smiled. "All right then. Prepare to leave Fishman Island. We've got a lot to do." "Aye, Captain." As dawn painted the sky, Noir and Ace made their way to the palace to bid King Neptune farewell. Neptune's massive frame filled the throne, the the radiant Princess Shirahoshi seated beside him. With the immediate threat to her life gone, Shirahoshi seemed content to remain by her family's side. Noir wasn't surprised to see them together. Neptune looked at Noir with a tinge of regret. I wish you could stay longer, but I understand you have pressing matters. He's probably just relieved I'm leaving before I cause any more mayhem. Noir thought with amusement. He didn't comment, instead pushing Ace's wheelchair forward. Please look after my friend. Make sure he doesn't go running off before he's fully healed. Neptune puffed up his chest. You have my word. Ace, looking bored, propped his chin on his hand. Stuck recuperating on Fishman Island. Not exactly my idea of a good time. Ignoring Ace's grumbling, Noir glanced at Shirahoshi. She sat quietly beside her father, fiddling with her fingers, a troubled expression on her face. Princess Shirahoshi, Noir asked gently, is something bothering you? Shirahoshi jumped, as if caught off guard. Her hands tightened on her tail fin as she straightened up. Mr. Noir. See, could you perhaps take me to the surface, just to see it? Noir's eyes lit up. He hadn't even hinted at it, and yet the princess herself had voiced the very thought he'd been entertaining. With her innate observation haki and the power of Poseidon within her, Shirahoshi had the potential to become an incredibly powerful ally. But even if Shirahoshi was willing, Shirahoshi, don't be foolish, Neptune boomed, slamming his solid gold scepter on the floor. You're a princess, not a warrior. The surface world is far too dangerous, you can't possibly go. Noir sighed inwardly. This was precisely why he hadn't dared to suggest it himself. Fishman Island was rife with animosity towards humans and pirates. Even Odahime's years of effort had barely made a dent in the deeply ingrained prejudices. Pirates still regularly raided the island, kidnapping fishmen and merfolk to sell into slavery. Bridging that chasm of hatred seemed an impossible task, and with Shirahoshi's beauty and the secret of Poseidon, Neptune would never willingly let her go. The risks were too great. What if she were captured and sold, or worse, if the world government discovered her true identity and took her for their own purposes? Noir was confident in his ability to protect her, but even Neptune's trust couldn't overcome such justifiable fears. Shirahoshi, easily moved by her father's harsh words, began to cry. I just want to see what the sun and clouds look like on the surface. And I want to understand why Mother tried so hard to bring humans and fishmen together, why she never gave up, even when her voice choked with emotion. A heavy silence descended upon the hall, enveloping Noir, Neptune, and Ace. Odahime was one of the few women Noir truly respected in this world, but even he questioned her methods. He found himself more aligned with Fisher Tiger's more pragmatic approach. In this world, strength earned respect, and respect earned a voice. It was a lesson he'd learned the hard way, even back in his old life. Formal channels and appeals to reason didn't always work. Sometimes, the only way to protect yourself was to be strong enough to fight back. Even if you weren't looking for a fight, survival demanded it. The fishmen, despite their natural advantages, had limited potential for growth and few true powerhouses among them. How could they ever hope to stand on equal footing with humanity, a race that bred warriors like weeds? After a moment of reflection, Noir smiled gently at Shirahoshi. Princess, you're still young. Even if you went to the surface, you might not fully grasp Queen Odahime's ideals. Tears streamed down Shirahoshi's face. Noir continued softly. Perhaps you should first try to understand the hearts of your people here on Fishman Island. Then decide if you still wish to venture to the surface. If, after that, you still long to see the world above, I will help you. Shirahoshi, her eyes brimming with tears, looked at Noir and whispered, Thank you, Mr. Noir. Noir smiled back and addressed Neptune. Well then, Your Majesty, I'll be taking my leave. Neptune nodded and escorted Noir out of the palace. The Arc Maxim was already prepared for departure. As Noir boarded, he waved goodbye to Neptune and Shirahoshi. Ace, standing below, called out, waving enthusiastically, Noir, I'll see you in the new world once I'm healed. Noir grinned. We'll see about that. Ace has already met Jinbei. He might even join Whitebeard's crew early. If that happens, he'll be safe. Arc Maxim sailed through the massive gates of Fishman Island, the boat tilting upwards as it ascended into the open sea. The crew waved goodbye to the underwater kingdom. This was probably their shortest stay on any island, but Noir and Riho were pressed for time. Ace, sitting in his wheelchair, sighed. It was so short, I barely got to see Noir again. It's all because of this injury, Deuce, pushing the wheelchair, replied impassively, but you helped Mr. Noir, didn't you? Ace leaned back, a smile touching his lips, that's true. Deuce watched the receding Arc Maxim, analyzing the situation. Mr. Noir is on bad terms with the world government. He probably didn't want to put you in danger, Captain. Ace nodded, his expression clouding over. Honestly, I still don't trust the world government. Jinbei, approaching from behind, overheard Ace's remark and recalled some recent intel he gathered. The rookie pirate, Fire Fist, Ace, though initially overshadowed by Devil Noir, was gaining recognition for his formidable strength. Ace possessed immense potential but, unlike Noir, lacked maturity. Jinbei looked thoughtfully at Ace, then sat down beside him. "Captain Ace, may I have a word with you?" Ace glanced at the large fish man, surprised. Sure." Jinbei asked, "Do you have any specific goals once you enter the new world?" Ace hesitated, then scratched his head. "Just more adventures, I guess." "Just as I thought." Jinbei smiled. "With your strength, Captain Ace, you could join a powerful crew." Ace's eyes narrowed. "No, thanks. I'm strong enough on my own." Indeed, among the current generation of pirates, perhaps only Noir surpassed Ace's power, and he was a friend, not a rival. Jinbei understood the mindset of a rookie like Ace. He continued, his smile widening. "This particular crew is led by a man stronger than admirals, a man said to be the world's strongest." Ace straightened up, intrigued. "Who's that? I'd like to meet him." Jinbei pointed towards a pirate flag flying high above the palace. "The pirate who protects Fishman Island, Edward Newgate, known as Whitebeard." Ace's gaze sharpened as he looked at the flag, a dismissive smile playing on his lips. "Every legend has its sunset. Now is our time, mine and Noir's." "Ow!" Noir jerked his head back, rubbing his nose. "Damn it, that must be Nami yelling at me again." Robin patted his head, curious. "You mentioned having two sisters. Is one of them named Nami?" Riha, standing like a loyal retainer behind Noir, couldn't help but ask, "The captain's sisters? Are they your adoptive mother's daughters?" Noir shook his head, explaining his family situation to his crew for the first time. "Nami, Najiko, and I were orphans wandering the battlefield. Belmir adopted us, and we became siblings." Riha listened intently, then exclaimed, "Then Noidam owes a debt to Lady Belmir for raising such an exceptional individual." Enel, sitting nearby, scoffed. "More like raising a first-class pain in the ass." Wiper and Lucci, in perfect synchronization, picked up their chairs and moved further away from Enel. Fujitora, lounging in a deck chair, sipped his tea, a serene expression on his face, the picture of tranquility. The peaceful scene was shattered by a sudden commotion on the deck of the Arc Maxim. A cloud of dust erupted as the sounds of a scuffle filled the air. Noir casually dusted off his hands as the crew watched Enel, sprawled on the deck, face down and defeated. They gulped nervously. Noir spread a nautical chart on the table. "This is the island of Abrulet. We'll be landing shortly." After a long underwater voyage, as soon as the Arc Maxim had surfaced from Fishman Island, Noir had Enel generate electricity to propel the ship forward at high speed. After hours of flight, they were nearing their destination. Noir handed the chart back to Riha, a hint of uncertainty in his voice. "Riha, are you sure the people of Noidam won't reject me?" Riha looked puzzled. "Why would they reject your highness?" Noir hesitated, unsure how to explain. Noidam failed to protect them, leaving them stateless, so. After 20 years of wandering, how many would still remember the kingdom of Noidam? Riha smiled. "The people of Noidam would never betray the former king. Because it was the former king who sheltered us from the world government's persecution." Noir's eyes widened. "The government is involved again?" After hearing Riha's explanation, Noir finally understood their unwavering loyalty and their relentless search for the first prince's heir. Years ago, nations that weren't affiliated with the world government faced constant threats of destruction, whether by pirates or the government itself. For reasons unknown, the former king of Noidam had adopted orphans and protected the citizens of fallen nations whenever possible. Though he'd only helped a small number, he'd earned their undying loyalty. When Noidam fell, its people scattered, few of the original inhabitants remaining. But this small group, refusing to accept the destruction of their home, had hidden on Abrulet Island, waiting for the first prince's heir. That's why Riha was so certain they would accept Noir. Relieved, Noir finally let go of his worries. Just then, the outline of Abrulet Island appeared on the horizon.